The stagecoach lurched to a violent stop, throwing Sarah Lancaster against the worn leather seat as dust billowed through the window, coating her dark traveling dress in a layer of Texas grit. Georgetown, Texas stretched before her in the afternoon heat of 1876, a collection of weathered buildings that seemed to shimmer in waves under the relentless sun. Her heart hammered against her ribs as she clutched the letter that had brought her across half the country, the carefully written words from Thomas Zimmerman promising a home, a future, a marriage. She had never seen his face, knew nothing of him beyond the formal correspondence they had exchanged over 6 months. But desperation had driven her from Boston after her father's debts had left her with nothing but a tarnished name and empty pockets. The driver opened the door, offering a calloused hand to help her down. Sarah accepted, smoothing her skirts with trembling fingers as she surveyed the town. The main street was busy with afternoon activity. Cowboys on horseback moved between the saloon and the general store, women with parasols crossed the dusty road, and somewhere a dog barked with persistent enthusiasm. The air smelled of horses, leather, and something cooking that made her stomach clench with hunger. She had eaten sparingly on the journey, conserving what little money she had left. "Miss Lancaster." A deep voice cut through her observations, and Sarah turned to find a man approaching her. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with sun-darkened skin and eyes the color of creek water after a storm. Dark hair fell across his forehead beneath a worn hat, and when he removed it, she noticed the way the sun had streaked lighter shades through the brown. He could not have been much older than her own 22 years, perhaps 26 or 27 at most. "I'm Nathan Zimmerman. I'm here to collect you for my brother Thomas." The words landed like stones in still water. Sarah blinked, confusion rippling through her. "Your brother, but I thought, the letters." "Thomas wrote them, yes." Nathan's expression remained carefully neutral, but something flickered in his eyes that she could not quite identify. Disappointment, perhaps, or relief. "He owns the ranch about 5 miles outside town. He sent me to fetch you since he is dealing with a situation with some cattle rustlers who have been plaguing the area. He apologizes for not greeting you himself." Sarah felt her cheeks flush. The romantic notion she had harbored, foolish as it was, of meeting her intended husband for the first time had evaporated like morning dew. Instead, she stood in the dust being collected like a piece of luggage by a stranger who happened to share her future husband's surname. "I see. Well, I appreciate you making the journey, Mr. Zimmerman. Just Nathan, please." He moved past her to retrieve her trunk from the back of the stagecoach, lifting it with an ease that suggested considerable strength. "The wagon is just over here. It is not much, but it will get us to the ranch before sunset if we leave now." She followed him to a sturdy wagon hitched to 2 horses, watching as he secured her trunk in the back. When he offered his hand to help her up onto the seat, his grip was warm and steady, calloused from hard work. Sarah settled herself, arranging her skirts, acutely aware of how close they would be sitting for the next several hours. The bench was narrow, built for practicality rather than comfort. Nathan climbed up beside her, taking the reins with practiced hands. "Have you eaten? There is a restaurant back there if you need something before we head out." "I am fine, thank you." The lie came easily. She had learned to ignore hunger over the past months. He glanced at her, those storm-colored eyes seeing more than she wanted to reveal. Without a word, he reached behind the seat and produced a cloth-wrapped bundle, placing it in her lap. "My sister Emily packed extra biscuits and ham this morning. She always makes too much. Would be a shame to waste it." The kindness in the gesture threatened to undo her composure. Sarah unwrapped the cloth with careful fingers, finding thick biscuits stuffed with sliced ham. The smell alone made her mouth water. "Thank you. That is very thoughtful." They rode in silence for a while as she ate, the town falling away behind them as the landscape opened into rolling hills dotted with scrub brush and the occasional cluster of trees. The sun beat down mercilessly, and Sarah was grateful for her bonnet, though she could feel sweat gathering at the nape of her neck. Nathan seemed unbothered by the heat, his attention on the road ahead, one hand holding the reins loosely while the other rested on his knee. "How was the journey from Boston?" he asked after a time, his voice breaking the silence that had stretched between them. "Long," Sarah admitted. "I have never traveled so far before. The trains were crowded and the stagecoach from Austin was rather uncomfortable. I imagine it is quite different from what you are used to." He guided the horses around a rut in the road. "Georgetown is not Boston. No, it certainly is not." She brushed crumbs from her lap, her appetite finally satisfied, "but I did not come expecting it to be. I came for a fresh start, a new life." Nathan was quiet for a moment and she felt his eyes on her profile. "Thomas told me a little about your circumstances. I am sorry about your father." Sarah stiffened. Her father's death 6 months ago had been both a tragedy and a relief, though she would never admit the latter aloud. He had gambled away their modest fortune, leaving her alone and destitute, subject to the cruel gossip of Boston society. The mail-order bride advertisement had seemed like divine intervention when she had discovered it in the newspaper, a chance to escape the whispers and pitying looks. "Thank you. It has been difficult, but I am managing. Takes courage to come all this way to marry a stranger." There was something in his tone she could not quite place. Admiration, concern. "Not many women would do it. Not many women find themselves in my position." She adjusted her bonnet, focusing on the horizon rather than his face. "Sometimes circumstances require unconventional choices." The wagon creaked over the uneven ground, and Sarah gripped the edge of the seat as they navigated a particularly rough patch. Nathan's arm brushed against hers as he worked the reins, and she was startled by the warmth that radiated through the fabric of their clothes. She shifted slightly, creating a small space between them. "What is your brother like?" The question emerged before she could stop it. "Thomas, I mean." The letters were informative, but one can only learn so much through correspondence. Nathan's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "Thomas is. He is the eldest. Runs the ranch our father left us when he died 3 years back. Works hard, knows cattle and horses better than most men in the county." It was the kind of answer that said everything and nothing at all. Sarah waited, sensing there was more he was not saying. When the silence stretched, she prompted gently, "But what is he like as a person? Practical, focused on the ranch. He is not much for conversation or social occasions." Nathan kept his eyes on the road. "He needs a wife who can manage a household, help with the work, someone steady and capable." "That is what he wrote in the advertisement, yes." Yes. Sarah had memorized every word of that advertisement, had read it so many times the newspaper had grown soft and creased. Rancher seeking sensible wife for partnership in building future. Must be hardworking, practical, and willing to embrace frontier life. Courtship through correspondence. Serious inquiries only. He seemed very clear about his expectations. Thomas is nothing if not clear. Something bitter edged Nathan's words, but before Sarah could question it, he continued. "The ranch is about 2,000 acres. We run cattle mostly, some horses. Emily keeps a garden and chickens. She will be happy to have another woman around. It gets lonely out there for her." "How old is your sister?" 19. "She has been managing the house since our mother passed 5 years ago. Does a good job of it, but she is young to carry that responsibility alone." Sarah felt a pang of sympathy. She had been 17 when her mother died, understood the weight of suddenly shouldering adult burdens. I will do my best to help her. I may not know much about ranch life, but I can cook and clean and sew. I managed our household in Boston after my mother passed. That will be appreciated. Nathan's expression softened slightly. Emily is a good girl, spirited but good-hearted. You will like her. The landscape changed gradually as they traveled, the sparse vegetation giving way to grassland where cattle grazed in distant clusters. Fences began to appear, marking property boundaries, and eventually they turned onto a narrower track that led toward a collection of buildings visible in the distance. That is the ranch, Nathan said, gesturing ahead. The main house is the larger building. Barn and stables are to the left, bunkhouse for the ranch hands to the right. We have 6 men working for us currently, good workers all of them. Sarah studied the approaching homestead with a mixture of anticipation and trepidation. The house was larger than she had expected, a 2-story structure built of wood with a wide porch that wrapped around the front and side. It looked solid and well-maintained, with curtains visible in the windows and flower boxes that showed signs of care. The barn and outbuildings were similarly well kept, suggesting prosperity and attention to detail. As they drew closer, a young woman emerged from the house, wiping her hands on her apron. She had the same dark hair as Nathan, though hers fell in a long braid over one shoulder, and her face was animated with curiosity and welcome. She hurried down the porch steps as Nathan pulled the wagon to a stop. You must be Sarah. Oh, I am so glad you are finally here. Emily's enthusiasm was infectious, her smile genuine and warm. The journey must have been exhausting. Come inside, I have tea ready and some cake if you are hungry. Nathan jumped down and came around to help Sarah from the wagon. His hands spanned her waist as he lifted her down, and for a moment they stood close enough that she could see the gold flecks in his gray eyes. Then he stepped back, releasing her, and turned to retrieve her trunk. Emily linked her arm through Sarah's, chattering happily as she led her toward the house. Your room is all ready. I put fresh linens on the bed this morning and picked some wildflowers for the dresser. It is not fancy, but it is comfortable. Thomas wanted you to have the room at the front of the house where you can see the sunrise. He thought you might like that. The thoughtfulness of the gesture touched Sarah even as she felt a renewed flutter of nervousness about meeting the man she was meant to marry. That sounds lovely, thank you. The interior of the house was cooler, a relief after the heat outside. The front door opened into a spacious parlor with simple but sturdy furniture, rag rugs on the wooden floors, and windows that let in generous light. Everything was clean and orderly, testament to Emily's housekeeping skills. A stone fireplace dominated one wall, and above it hung a painting of a landscape that might have been the surrounding countryside. Come, I will show you to your room so you can freshen up. Emily guided her toward a staircase. Thomas should be back within the hour. He was checking the north pasture fence, but promised to be here for supper. Sarah followed her up the stairs, acutely aware of Nathan's footsteps behind them as he carried her trunk. The hallway at the top was lined with several doors, and Emily opened the second one on the right, revealing a pleasant room with a large bed covered in a colorful quilt, a dresser with a mirror, a washstand, and a rocking chair by the window. True to Emily's word, wildflowers in shades of yellow and purple sat in a simple vase on the dresser. Nathan set the trunk at the foot of the bed, then straightened, his hat in his hands. I will leave you to settle in. Emily, make sure she has everything she needs. I will, thank you, Nathan. Emily was already moving to the washstand, pouring water from a pitcher into the basin. Supper will be ready at 6. He nodded, his eyes meeting Sarah's briefly before he left, closing the door behind him. The room seemed larger in his absence, and Sarah released a breath she had not realized she was holding. "He is sweet, is he not?" Emily said, bringing her a clean towel. "Nathan, I mean. He is the kindest person I know. Thomas is good too, of course, but different, more serious." Sarah washed her hands and face, the cool water refreshing after the dusty journey. "They seem quite different from each other." "Oh, they are. Night and day, my father used to say." Emily sat on the edge of the bed, watching her with open curiosity. "Thomas is all business, always thinking about the ranch, what needs to be done next. Nathan is more. I do not know how to explain it. He notices things, things. He remembers birthdays and favorite foods, and when you are sad, even if you do not say anything." It was an interesting portrait of the two brothers, and Sarah found herself oddly grateful that it had been Nathan who collected her from town, rather than the stern, practical man she was meant to marry. At least the introduction to this new life had been softened by kindness. "How long have you known about me?" Sarah asked, unpinning her hat and setting it carefully on the dresser. "Thomas told us about 2 months ago that he had been corresponding with someone from Boston. He was very matter-of-fact about it, said he had decided it was time to marry and wanted a wife who understood it would be a practical arrangement." Emily's nose wrinkled slightly. "Not very romantic, but that is Thomas. He does not believe in romance, says it is impractical and gets in the way of good sense." Sarah absorbed this information with a sinking feeling in her stomach. She had not expected a love match, had been quite clear with herself about the realities of her situation, but some small part of her had hoped for the possibility of affection, of companionship at least. A man who thought romance was impractical did not sound promising. What did Nathan think about it? The question escaped before she could examine why she wanted to know. Emily's expression grew thoughtful. "He did not say much. Nathan keeps his feelings to himself mostly, but I could tell he was not entirely happy about it. They argued the night Thomas told us, though I could not hear what was said. The walls are thick." Before Sarah could respond, the sound of a door closing downstairs echoed through the house, followed by heavy footsteps. Emily jumped up, smoothing her apron. "That must be Thomas now. Come, you should meet him." Sarah's heart began to race as she followed Emily back downstairs. This was the moment she had been simultaneously anticipating and dreading for months. Everything had led to this, the culmination of her desperate gamble to escape Boston and build a new life. The man standing in the parlor was unmistakably Nathan's brother. He had the same tall build, the same dark hair, but where Nathan's features held a certain softness, a warmth in his eyes and the corners of his mouth, Thomas's face was all hard angles and stern lines. He looked to be in his early 30s, his skin weathered by sun and wind, his hands rough and capable. He turned as they entered, his expression neutral as his gaze swept over Sarah with an assessing quality that made her feel like livestock being evaluated. "Miss Lancaster." His voice was deeper than Nathan's, gravelly. "I am Thomas Zimmerman. Welcome to the ranch." "Thank you, Mr. Zimmerman. I appreciate your hospitality." Sarah clasped her hands in front of her, willing them not to shake. "I apologize for not meeting you in town myself. We have had trouble with rustlers, and I needed to ensure the herd was secure." He gestured toward the sofa. "Please sit. We should discuss the arrangements." It was hardly the warm welcome she might have hoped for, but Sarah reminded herself that she had known what to expect. She sat, arranging her skirts while Thomas took a chair across from her. Emily disappeared toward what Sarah assumed was the kitchen, leaving them alone. Thomas leaned forward, his forearms resting on his knees. "I believe in being direct, Miss Lancaster." I placed that advertisement because I need a wife to help run this household and eventually raise children. I am not looking for romance or a love match. I am looking for a partner who can work hard, manage domestic affairs, and build a stable home. If that is not what you want, it is better we know now before we proceed with the marriage. His bluntness was startling, though Sarah supposed she appreciated the honesty. I understand, Mr. Zimmerman. I came here with realistic expectations. I need security and a home. You need a wife to fulfill certain practical roles. It seems we can provide what the other needs. Something that might have been approval flickered in his eyes. Good. We will marry in 3 days. That will give you time to settle in and prepare. The ceremony will be simple at the church in town. Pastor Williams has already been informed. 3 days. Sarah felt her stomach clench. That is very soon. No point in waiting. The sooner we formalize the arrangement, the sooner we can move forward. Thomas stood, clearly considering the conversation concluded. Emily will show you around tomorrow, explain your duties. Supper will be ready shortly. I need to wash up. He left the room without further ceremony, his boots heavy on the stairs. Sarah sat alone in the parlor, feeling oddly hollow. This was what she had agreed to, what she had traveled across the country for, yet the reality of it was more cold and transactional than she had anticipated. Do not mind Thomas. Nathan's voice startled her, and she turned to find him leaning against the door frame, his arms crossed. He is not trying to be unkind, he just does not know any other way to be. How long have you been standing there? Long enough. He pushed off the frame and came into the room, taking the chair Thomas had vacated. Are you all right? The question, asked with such genuine concern, threatened to crack the composure she was struggling to maintain. I am fine. It is just a lot to take in. You do not have to marry him. Nathan's words were quiet but intense. If you do not want this, if it is not what you expected, you can leave. I will take you back to town tomorrow, help you book passage back to Boston or wherever you want to go. Sarah stared at him, surprised by the offer and the fervor behind it. I cannot go back to Boston. There is nothing for me there. Then somewhere else. You have choices, Sarah. You do not have to settle for a loveless marriage just because you came all this way. And what would I do? How would I live? She heard the bitterness in her own voice. I have no money, no family, no prospects. Your brother is offering me security, a home, a purpose. That is more than I would have anywhere else. Nathan's jaw worked, frustration evident in every line of his body. You deserve more than that. More than a man who sees you as a convenience, a solution to a problem. Perhaps I do, but we do not always get what we deserve in this life. Sarah stood, needing to move, to do something with the nervous energy coursing through her. I made this choice, and I will see it through. I am not some fragile flower who cannot face difficult realities. I never thought you were. He stood as well, and they faced each other across the small space. I think you are brave and strong, and I think you are selling yourself short. The words hung between them, charged with something Sarah did not want to examine too closely. Before she could respond, Emily called from the kitchen that supper was ready, breaking the tension. The meal was a quiet affair. Thomas sat at the head of the table, Emily to his right and Sarah to his left, with Nathan across from her. The food was good, roasted chicken with potatoes and greens from the garden, and Emily kept up a steady stream of conversation that filled the silence the others left. Sarah was grateful for it, though she found herself barely tasting the food, too aware of Nathan's presence across the table, the way he occasionally glanced at her when he thought she was not looking. Thomas excused himself immediately after eating, citing work that needed to be done in the barn. Nathan helped Emily clear the table despite her protests that he had already done his share of work for the day, and Sarah joined them, needing something to occupy her hands and mind. "You do not have to help, Sarah. You must be exhausted from traveling." Emily tried to shoo her away from the dishes. "I would rather be useful." Sarah rolled up her sleeves, accepting the dish towel Emily handed her. "Besides, I should learn where everything goes if I am to live here." They worked in comfortable rhythm, Emily washing, Sarah drying, and Nathan putting things away in the cupboards. The kitchen was warm and smelled of soap and lemon, and Sarah found herself relaxing slightly in the domestic simplicity of the task. "What did you think of Thomas?" Emily asked, her tone carefully casual. "He is very direct." Sarah chose her words carefully, aware of Nathan's attention even though his back was to them as he reached up to place plates on a high shelf. "That is a polite way of putting it." Emily grinned. "He has all the charm of a fence post sometimes, but he is a good man. He took care of us when Papa died, kept the ranch running, made sure I could stay in school for an extra year when I wanted to study more. He sounds like a responsible person." Sarah folded the dish towel, smoothing out the wrinkles. "That is important in a husband. Responsibility is not everything, though." This came from Nathan, who had turned to face them, his expression serious. A husband should care about his wife's happiness, not just her usefulness. Emily glanced between them, her eyes widening slightly at the tension in Nathan's voice. "Well, I am sure Thomas will make Sarah happy in his own way. He just needs time to adjust to the idea of having a wife. He has been a bachelor for a long time." Sarah excused herself shortly after, claiming fatigue, though in truth she simply needed solitude to process everything that had happened. Her room was exactly as she had left it, the wildflowers bright against the darkening sky outside the window. She changed into her nightgown and sat in the rocking chair, watching the sun set over the Texas hills. Everything felt surreal and overwhelming. Tomorrow she would begin learning the routines of the ranch, the expectations that would govern her days. In 3 days she would marry a man who saw her as a practical solution rather than a person. It was what she had agreed to, what she had chosen, yet doubt gnawed at her. A soft knock on the door interrupted her thoughts. "Sarah, it is Emily. May I come in?" "Of course." Sarah pulled a shawl around her shoulders. Emily entered, carrying a tray with 2 cups of tea. "I thought you might like some company, and some chamomile tea. It helps me sleep when I am anxious." The kindness in the gesture made Sarah's throat tight. "Thank you. That is very thoughtful." They sat together, Emily in the rocking chair and Sarah on the edge of the bed, sipping tea in the gathering darkness. "I know this must all be very strange for you," Emily said after a while. "Coming to a new place, meeting new people, preparing to marry someone you barely know. It is certainly different from anything I have experienced before." Sarah wrapped her hands around the warm cup. "But I will adjust. People are adaptable when they need to be. Nathan thinks Thomas is making a mistake." Emily's words were quiet, almost hesitant. "He does not think Thomas should marry someone just because he needs a wife. He thinks there should be more to it." Sarah's heart skipped. "Nathan said that." "Not in so many words, but I know my brother. I can tell when something is bothering him, and this whole situation has him tied up in knots." Emily set down her cup, her young face serious in the lamplight. "I probably should not tell you this, but Nathan argued with Thomas for hours when he first announced he was bringing you here. Said it was not fair to you or to Thomas to build a marriage on practicality alone." "What did Thomas say?" "That Nathan was being ridiculous and romantic, and that practical marriages work better than love matches anyway because expectations are clear." Emily sighed. "They are both stubborn. Once they set their minds to something, neither one will budge." Sarah absorbed this information, unsure what to do with it. Your brothers are very different, they are. Papa used to say Thomas got all his seriousness and Nathan got all his heart. Emily smiled sadly. Nathan has always felt things more deeply. When Mama died, Thomas threw himself into work, but Nathan, he grieved for months, still tends her grave every week, brings fresh flowers when he can find them. The image of Nathan tending his mother's grave with careful devotion made Sarah's chest ache. She barely knew this man, had spent only a few hours in his presence, yet everything she learned about him painted a picture of someone kind and thoughtful, the kind of person she might have chosen for herself in different circumstances. But she was not here to marry Nathan. She was here to marry his brother, to fulfill an agreement and build a practical life. Letting herself think otherwise would only lead to heartache. I should let you rest. Emily stood, collecting the tea cups. Tomorrow I will show you around properly, introduce you to the chickens. They have personalities, you will see, and the garden needs weeding if you are interested in that sort of thing. After Emily left, Sarah prepared for bed, but sleep eluded her. She lay in the darkness listening to the unfamiliar sounds of the ranch, the distant lowing of cattle, the creak of the house settling, the whisper of wind through the eaves. Somewhere out there, Nathan was likely in his own room, perhaps thinking about the stranger who had arrived to marry his brother, perhaps not thinking of her at all. She needed to put him out of her mind, to focus on the future she had chosen. In 3 days, she would be Mrs. Thomas Zimmerman, mistress of this ranch, partner to a man who valued capability over affection. It was more than many women had, more than she had any right to expect given her circumstances. But as she finally drifted toward sleep, it was not Thomas's stern face she saw in her mind, but Nathan's storm-colored eyes filled with concern, and something else she dared not name. The next morning, Sarah woke to sunlight streaming through the window and the smell of coffee wafting up from downstairs. She dressed quickly in one of her simpler dresses, a practical calico in blue that was suitable for work, and braided her dark blonde hair before pinning it up. When she descended to the kitchen, she found Emily already busy at the stove, frying eggs and bacon. "Good morning. I hope you slept well." Emily looked fresh and energetic, her hair in a neat braid. "Coffee is on the table and breakfast will be ready in just a moment." The men already ate and headed out to the range. They start early during roundup season. Sarah poured herself coffee, savoring the strong, hot brew. "What can I do to help? Just sit and eat this morning. You are a guest until the wedding. After that, you can help all you want." Emily slid eggs and bacon onto a plate and set it before her. "Today, I thought I would show you around, introduce you to how we do things here. It is not complicated, but there are routines." They spent the morning together, and Sarah found herself genuinely enjoying Emily's company. The younger woman was bright and talkative, full of stories about growing up on the ranch, about the hands who worked for them, about the neighboring families. She showed Sarah the chicken coop, where a dozen hens pecked and clucked, the garden where vegetables grew in neat rows, the root cellar where preserved foods were stored. "We do most of our own food preparation," Emily explained as they worked together weeding the garden. "In winter, we rely heavily on what we have put up during summer and fall. I make preserves, pickles, cure meat. It is a lot of work, but it has to be done. I helped with similar tasks in Boston, though on a smaller scale." Sarah pulled a stubborn weed, shaking soil from its roots. "My mother taught me to put up strawberry preserves and pickle cucumbers. I enjoyed it, actually. There is something satisfying about filling jars for winter." "Oh, we will get along wonderfully then." Emily's enthusiasm was infectious. "I have been doing it alone since Mama died, and it is so much work. Having help will make it almost fun." As the sun climbed higher, they retreated to the shade of the porch with glasses of cool water from the well. In the distance, Sarah could see riders moving among the cattle, too far away to distinguish individuals but close enough to observe the work. "That is Thomas and Nathan out there," Emily said, following her gaze. "And probably Jed and Marcus, two of our best hands. They are moving the herd to fresh grazing. It looks like hard work. It is. Ranching is not for the faint of heart, but the men love it, especially Nathan. He is happiest on horseback with the sky overhead. Thomas loves it too, but differently. For Thomas, it is about building something, creating success. For Nathan, it is about the freedom, the connection to the land." Sarah found herself watching the distant figures, wondering which was Nathan, imagining him riding with that freedom Emily described. She pulled her attention away, irritated with herself. This fascination was pointless and potentially dangerous. She needed to focus on her future with Thomas, not daydream about his brother. The afternoon brought a visit from a neighboring rancher's wife, Mrs. Patricia Hayes, a woman in her 40s with kind eyes and a no-nonsense manner. She brought a basket of fresh bread and a jar of honey as a welcome gift. "Heard Thomas was finally taking a wife," she said, settling into a chair in the parlor. "About time, if you ask me. A man needs a good woman to make a house a home." They visited for an hour, Mrs. Hayes sharing local gossip and information about the community. There would be a church social in 2 weeks, she informed Sarah, and everyone would want to meet the new Mrs. Zimmerman. The school teacher was a young man from Missouri who boarded with the pastor. The doctor was competent but drank too much. The sheriff was fair-minded and honest, a rarity in these parts. After Mrs. Hayes left, Emily insisted Sarah rest before supper, and she retreated gratefully to her room. The day had been full of new information, new faces, new expectations. She lay on the bed without bothering to remove her shoes, staring at the ceiling and trying to organize her thoughts. Tomorrow was the final full day before the wedding. The day after that, she would become a wife. The speed of it all was dizzying, leaving her no real time to reconsider or adjust. Perhaps that was Thomas's intention, to move forward so quickly there was no opportunity for doubt or hesitation. She must have dozed because when she opened her eyes again, the light had changed to the softer gold of late afternoon. Voices drifted up from below, male voices in conversation. Sarah rose and splashed water on her face before heading downstairs. In the kitchen, Nathan stood talking with Emily while she prepared supper. He had removed his hat, and his hair was damp, as though he had dunked his head in the trough to wash away the day's dust. He looked tired but content, the kind of honest exhaustion that came from good work. When Sarah entered, his eyes found her immediately, and something in his expression shifted, warming. "How was your day?" he asked, informative. "Emily has been an excellent guide to ranch life." Sarah moved to help Emily with the vegetables that needed chopping. "Good. It is important you know what you are getting into." Nathan leaned against the counter, close enough that she could smell the scent of sun and horse and leather that clung to him. "This life is not easy. It asks a lot of people. I am not afraid of hard work." Sarah focused on the carrots she was slicing, keeping her cuts neat and even. "I did not think you were, but there is a difference between knowing something intellectually and living it daily." His voice was quiet, meant only for her ears as Emily had stepped out to the porch to ring the dinner bell for the ranch hands. Sarah set down the knife and turned to face him. "Why are you trying to discourage me, Nathan? What do you want me to do? Leave? I want you to be sure." He held her gaze, those gray eyes intense. "I want you to choose this because it is what you truly want, not because you feel you have no other options. We all make choices based on our circumstances. that does not make them less valid. Sarah kept her voice steady despite the way her heart was racing. I am sure about this, Nathan. Your concern is noted, but it is not necessary. Something painful flickered across his face before he schooled his expression to neutrality. All right then, I will not mention it again. But as he turned away to wash his hands at the basin, Sarah felt a pang of regret for the sharpness of her words. He was only being kind, only trying to ensure she was not making a terrible mistake. The fact that his attention and concern affected her more than Thomas's indifference was a problem she would have to manage on her own. Supper that evening included the ranch hands, 6 men who filed in with clean hands and damp hair, clearly on their best behavior in the presence of ladies. They were introduced as Jed, Marcus, William, Carlos, Frank, and Pete, ranging in age from early 20s to graying 50s. They treated Sarah with polite respect, welcoming her to the ranch with the kind of formal courtesy that suggested Emily had coached them beforehand. Thomas sat at the head of the table as before, but this time he made an effort at conversation, asking Sarah questions about her journey and her impressions of Texas. His attention felt stilted and obligatory, but she appreciated the attempt and answered as pleasantly as she could. After the meal, as the men dispersed to their evening activities and Emily began clearing dishes, Thomas asked Sarah to walk with him. They stepped out into the cooling evening air, the sky painted in shades of orange and purple as the sun set. The wedding is the day after tomorrow, Thomas began without preamble. I thought we should discuss expectations for the marriage. Sarah clasped her hands in front of her, waiting for him to continue. As my wife, you will manage the household, oversee domestic matters, help Emily with the cooking and preserving. When we have children, you will be responsible for their care and education until they are old enough for school. He spoke as though listing ranch duties. I will provide for you, ensure you have everything you need. I will treat you with respect and expect the same in return. I am not a complicated man, Miss Lancaster. I work, I sleep. I manage this ranch. I will not interfere in household matters if you do not interfere in ranch business. It was perhaps the most pragmatic, unromantic description of marriage Sarah had ever heard. And what about companionship, conversation, shared interests? Thomas looked at her as though the question confused him. We will share a home and eventually children. That is companionship. As for conversation, I am not much for idle talk. If you need female company, Emily is here and the neighboring ranchers' wives visit regularly. I see. Sarah felt something inside her grow cold and settle. This was truly what he wanted. A housekeeper who could bear children, nothing more. Is that acceptable to you? Thomas stopped walking, turning to face her in the gathering darkness. She could say no. Could refuse this cold arrangement and take Nathan up on his offer to help her leave. But to what end? To return to Boston in disgrace. To try her luck in another strange town with even less prospect of security. It is acceptable, Sarah heard herself say, and something fundamental shifted in that moment, a door closing on possibilities she had barely allowed herself to imagine. Good. Then we understand each other. Thomas nodded, clearly satisfied. I will see you at breakfast tomorrow. The ceremony is at 2 in the afternoon the following day. He walked back to the house, leaving her standing alone in the twilight. Sarah wrapped her arms around herself, feeling the evening chill seep through her dress. This was her life now. She had chosen it, agreed to it, and she would see it through. Sarah, Nathan's voice came from the shadows near the barn. He emerged into the fading light, concern etched on his features. Are you all right? I am fine. The lie tasted bitter. He came closer, close enough that she could see the way his eyes searched her face. What did Thomas say to you? He outlined his expectations for our marriage. It was very thorough and practical. Sarah tried to smile and failed. Everything is settled. You do not look like everything is settled. You look like your whole world just ended. Nathan's hand lifted as though to touch her arm, then fell back to his side. Talk to me, please. The genuine care in his voice threatened to break through the composure she was desperately trying to maintain. What would you have me say, Nathan? That I am marrying a man who sees me as a convenience, that I am trading myself for security. We both know that already. Then do not do it. His voice was urgent now, passionate in a way that made her heart ache. There are other options, other ways forward. You do not have to resign yourself to a loveless marriage. Easy for you to say when you have choices. The words came out sharper than intended. You have this ranch, this family, this life. I have nothing except what your brother is offering me. That is not true. You have yourself, your strength, your intelligence, your courage. Those things have value beyond what Thomas sees. Sarah laughed, but it came out broken. Value does not put food on the table or a roof over my head. Value does not protect me from poverty or destitution. Your brother's offer does. Is that really all you want from life? Safety. Nathan moved closer still, and Sarah found herself looking up at him, drowning in the intensity of his gaze. Do you not want to be cherished, to be loved, to have someone who cares about your thoughts and dreams and fears? Stop. The word came out as a whisper. Please stop. Why? Because the truth hurts. His hands did touch her now, gentle on her shoulders. Because you know you deserve better than what Thomas is offering. Because it does not matter what I deserve. Her voice rose, emotion finally breaking through. This is the hand I have been dealt, and I am playing it the best way I know how. I do not need you making it harder by suggesting impossible alternatives. They are not impossible. Nathan's thumbs moved in small circles on her shoulders, the touch both comforting and electrifying. You could stay here, not as Thomas's wife, but what? As a charity case, living on your family's goodwill with no real place or purpose. Sarah stepped back, breaking the contact. I need to belong somewhere, Nathan. I need to have a role, a reason to be. Your brother is offering me that, and I am taking it. The silence stretched between them, heavy with everything unsaid. Finally, Nathan nodded slowly, defeat in the slump of his shoulders. I understand. I just want you to know that if you ever change your mind, if you ever need help, I will be here, no matter what. Thank you. Sarah turned toward the house before he could see the tears threatening to fall. I should go inside. It is getting late. She left him standing there in the darkness and hurried into the house, up the stairs, into her room. Only when the door was safely closed did she allow herself to cry, muffling the sounds in her pillow so no one would hear. This was her choice. This was her future. She needed to make peace with it and stop letting Nathan's kindness and concern undermine her resolve. In 2 days, she would marry Thomas, and she would make the best of it. She would be a good wife, manage the household well, build a life here. And she would forget the way Nathan's touch had made her feel, the way his eyes had held hers with such tender intensity, the way he had offered her impossible alternatives with his whole heart. She had to forget, because remembering would destroy her. The following day passed in a blur of wedding preparations. Emily took Sarah into town to visit the dressmaker, an elderly woman named Mrs. Chen, who had a simple but lovely dress, already made that fit Sarah well enough with minor alterations. It was cream-colored cotton with lace at the collar and cuffs, appropriate for a practical ranch wedding. They purchased a few other necessities in town, including fabric for new everyday dresses and household items that Emily insisted they needed. Sarah met more of the townspeople, all curious about Thomas Zimmerman's mail-order bride, all polite but assessing in their welcomes. Nathan had stayed at the ranch, busy with work, and Sarah was grateful for his absence. She needed time to compose herself, to rebuild the walls that had crumbled during their conversation the night before. That evening, the pastor came to supper, a jovial man in his 50s who seemed delighted at the prospect of performing the wedding ceremony. He spoke enthusiastically about marriage as a sacred institution, about the importance of commitment and partnership. Thomas nodded along, Emily smiled encouragingly, and Sarah tried to look appropriately pleased. Nathan was quiet throughout the meal, his attention on his plate more than the conversation. Sarah felt his silence like a physical presence, but she did not allow herself to look at him, afraid of what she might see in his eyes. After the pastor left, Thomas announced he would be sleeping in the bunkhouse the night before the wedding. "Tradition," he said gruffly, as though embarrassed by the concession to sentimentality. Ma always said it was bad luck for the groom to see the bride the day of the wedding before the ceremony. It was the first indication Sarah had that Thomas was capable of honoring tradition or considering anything beyond pure practicality, and it gave her a small measure of comfort. Perhaps there was more to him than he showed, some capacity for softer feelings buried beneath the stern exterior. That night, Sarah lay awake for hours, watching moonlight paint silver patterns on the floor. Tomorrow at this time she would be married, bound by law and God to a man she barely knew. The reality of it was terrifying and surreal in equal measure. A soft sound in the hallway made her tense. Footsteps, hesitant, stopping outside her door. For a long moment nothing happened, and Sarah held her breath, her heart hammering. Then the footsteps retreated, and she heard a door close further down the hall. Nathan. It had to have been Nathan. Had he been checking on her? Or had he been on the verge of saying something, doing something, before thinking better of it? She would never know, and it was better that way. The wedding day dawned bright and clear, the kind of perfect Texas morning that seemed designed for new beginnings. Emily brought Sarah breakfast in bed, an indulgence she insisted on, and helped her dress and style her hair. The cream dress fit beautifully after Mrs. Chen's alterations, and Emily wove wildflowers into Sarah's upswept hair, chattering happily about how lovely she looked. "Thomas is a lucky man," Emily said, stepping back to admire her handiwork. "You are going to be so good for him, Sarah, I just know it." Sarah wished she shared Emily's optimism. She felt numb, disconnected from the moment, as though she were watching someone else prepare for this life-changing event. They arrived at the small church in Georgetown just before 2. The building was simple but well-maintained, with wooden pews and windows that let in generous light. A handful of townspeople had gathered, curious neighbors and friends of the family. Mrs. Hayes was there with her husband, smiling encouragingly at Sarah. Thomas waited at the front of the church in a dark suit that looked uncomfortable on his large frame. He had made an effort, his hair slicked back, his beard trimmed, and Sarah appreciated it even as her stomach churned with anxiety. Nathan stood beside his brother as the best man, and when Sarah's eyes met his, the pain she saw there nearly undid her. He looked like a man at a funeral rather than a wedding, his jaw tight, his hands clenched at his sides. The ceremony was brief. Pastor William spoke about marriage and commitment. Sarah and Thomas exchanged simple vows, and a ring was placed on her finger, a plain gold band that felt heavy and foreign. And then it was done. She was Mrs. Thomas Zimmerman for better or worse, until death parted them. Thomas kissed her cheek briefly, perfunctorily, and they walked back down the aisle together to polite applause. Outside, people offered congratulations and well wishes. Sarah smiled and thanked them, playing the role of happy bride while feeling utterly hollow inside. The reception was held at the ranch. Tables set up on the lawn with food Emily and several neighboring women had prepared. There was music from a fiddle player, and some people danced, though Thomas showed no interest in participating. He stood talking with other ranchers about cattle prices and weather predictions, while Sarah made conversation with the wives. She was cutting the cake, a lovely creation Emily had labored over, when she felt someone watching her. Looking up, she found Nathan standing alone near the barn, his eyes fixed on her with such raw longing that it took her breath away. For a moment, they simply stared at each other across the distance, and Sarah felt something crack open in her chest, some desperate longing she had been trying to suppress. Then Thomas appeared at her side, and Nathan turned away, disappearing into the barn. As evening fell and guests began to depart, Sarah felt panic rising in her throat. Tonight she would share Thomas's room, his bed. The reality of what she had agreed to became unavoidable. Emily hugged her tight before retreating to her own room. "I am so happy you are my sister now," she whispered. "Everything is going to be wonderful, you will see." Thomas led Sarah upstairs to the master bedroom, a large room at the back of the house that she had not entered before. It was simply furnished with a large bed, a wardrobe, and a dresser. "I will give you privacy to prepare for bed," Thomas said, his discomfort evident. "I need to check on something in the barn. I will return shortly." After he left, Sarah changed into her nightgown with shaking hands and sat on the edge of the bed, waiting. Minutes passed, then more minutes. She heard the house settle around her, heard Emily's door close, heard footsteps in the hall that might have been Nathan. When Thomas finally returned, he looked as uncomfortable as she felt. He changed into his nightshirt with his back to her, then climbed into bed, maintaining a careful distance. "I expect you are tired from the day," he said stiffly. "We should sleep." Sarah released a breath she had not realized she was holding. "Yes, that sounds wise." He blew out the lamp and they lay in darkness, two strangers sharing a bed, the space between them vast and unbridgeable. After a while, Thomas's breathing deepened into sleep, but Sarah remained awake, staring at the ceiling and wondering what she had done. This was her life now. This careful distance, this absence of warmth or affection, this practical arrangement devoid of true connection. She had known what she was agreeing to, had accepted it as the price of security. But knowing something intellectually and living it in reality were, as Nathan had said, entirely different things. The first weeks of marriage established a pattern. Sarah managed the household alongside Emily, learning the rhythms of ranch life. She cooked and cleaned and tended the garden and chickens. Thomas treated her with polite respect, thanked her for meals, and occasionally commented on how well she managed things. At night, they shared a bed but little else. He had yet to consummate the marriage, and Sarah did not know whether to be relieved or concerned by his continued distance. Nathan avoided her as much as possible. He took his meals quickly and left, spent long hours on the range, and spoke to her only when necessary. The warmth and concern he had shown before the wedding had disappeared, replaced by careful politeness that hurt more than anger would have. Sarah told herself it was better this way. Distance would help her adjust, help her accept her new reality without the complication of inappropriate feelings. But she missed him, missed their conversations and the way he had looked at her as though she mattered. One afternoon, about 3 weeks after the wedding, Sarah was hanging laundry on the line behind the house when she heard raised voices from the barn. She recognized Thomas's gravelly tone and Nathan's smoother one, both raised in anger. "This is none of your business," Thomas was shouting. "It is my business when you treat your wife like a piece of furniture." Nathan's voice held a fury Sarah had never heard from him. She is a person, Thomas, with feelings and needs. She deserves better than what you are giving her. What I do with my wife is between us. You have no right to interfere. Someone needs to interfere. You have had her here for weeks and barely speak to her beyond necessities. You do not even share a real marriage with her. Sarah's face flamed. How did Nathan know that? Had Thomas told him? Or was it simply obvious from the tension between them? I will not be lectured by my younger brother on how to conduct my marriage. Thomas's voice had gone cold and dangerous. Especially not when your concern seems motivated by more than brotherly interest in her welfare. The silence that followed was deafening. Sarah stood frozen, her hand gripping a wet sheet, her heart pounding so hard she thought it might burst from her chest. I do not know what you are implying. Nathan's words were careful, measured. Do not you? I see how you look at her when you think no one is watching. I'm not blind, Nathan. Then you see more than exists. Sarah is your wife. I respect that, even if I think you are making her miserable through your cold indifference. She agreed to a practical marriage. She knew what to expect. Knowing what to expect does not make it easier to live with. Nathan's voice rose again. She is lonely and isolated and trying so hard to make the best of a situation that would break most people. The least you could do is show her some kindness, some warmth. Treat her like she matters to you. I provide for her. I treat her with respect. That is what I promised, and that is what I am delivering. And you wonder why everyone says you have a heart made of stone. Sarah heard the sound of a scuffle, bodies hitting wood, and she rushed toward the barn. Inside, she found Thomas and Nathan squared off, Thomas's hand fisted in Nathan's shirt. Emily appeared from the house, her eyes wide with alarm. "Stop this!" Sarah's voice rang out, and both men turned to look at her. "Both of you, stop it right now." Thomas released Nathan, stepping back and straightening his shirt. Nathan's jaw was tight, his eyes blazing, but he made no move to continue the fight. Sarah advanced on both of them, anger overriding her usual caution. "I will not have you fighting over me like I am a prize to be won or a problem to be solved. Thomas, you are my husband, and I am doing my best to be the wife you wanted. Nathan, I appreciate your concern, but my marriage is not your responsibility." "Sarah," Nathan began, but she cut him off. "No. No more of this. Whatever is between you two, work it out without involving me. I have enough to manage without being the source of family conflict." She turned to Thomas. "If you have grievances with how I am conducting myself as your wife, tell me directly. Do not discuss it with your brother." Thomas had the grace to look slightly abashed. "I have no grievances. Nathan is overstepping." "Then tell him that yourself, but do not come to blows over it. This is a family, not a battlefield." Sarah looked between them, these two men who could not have been more different, who both affected her in ways she could not afford to examine. "Now, if you will excuse me, I have laundry to finish." She walked back to the clothesline on shaking legs, her hands trembling as she pinned sheets with more force than necessary. Behind her, she heard low voices continuing the conversation, but she could not make out words. Emily appeared at her side, taking up a sheet to help. "I am sorry you had to see that. They fight sometimes, but it is usually about ranch business, not personal matters. It is fine." Sarah focused on the mundane task, finding comfort in the routine. "Brothers fight. It will pass. Nathan cares about you." Emily's words were quiet, careful. "Perhaps more than he should." Sarah's hand stilled on the clothesline. "Emily, please do not. I am not judging. I am just observing." The younger woman's face was sympathetic. "I see how you look at each other when you think no one is watching. I see how miserable you both are trying to pretend there is nothing between you. There cannot be anything between us. I am married to his brother. I know. And I know you would never act on whatever you feel. You are too honorable for that, and so is Nathan. Emily pinned another sheet, her movements efficient. But feelings do not disappear just because they are inconvenient. Sarah blinked back tears, refusing to let them fall. What would you have me do? I made a choice and I am living with it. I know, I just wish. Emily trailed off, shaking her head. I wish things were different. I wish Thomas had not been so stubborn and practical. I wish you had met Nathan first. Wishing changes nothing. Sarah took the last sheet from the basket. We must deal with what is, not what might have been. That night, Thomas came to their room with a bottle of whiskey and 2 glasses. He poured for both of them without asking, handing Sarah a glass before sitting heavily on the edge of the bed. I owe you an apology, he said, staring into his drink. Nathan was right. I have not been treating you as a wife should be treated. Sarah sipped the whiskey, wincing at the burn. You have been treating me exactly as you said you would, with respect and provision. But not with warmth or affection or any of the things that make a marriage more than a business arrangement. Thomas drank his whiskey in one swallow, then poured another. I thought I could build a life on practicality alone, but it is not fair to you. Hope fluttered in Sarah's chest despite her efforts to suppress it. What are you saying? I am saying I will try to be better, more attentive, more present. He looked at her finally, his eyes tired and sad. I am not good at this, Sarah. I have spent so long focused on keeping this ranch running, keeping the family together after Pa died, that I have forgotten how to be anything other than responsible. But I can learn, if you are willing to be patient with me. It was the most vulnerable she had ever heard him, and Sarah felt her heart soften despite everything. I can be patient, Thomas, but I need you to talk to me, to treat me like a partner, not just a housekeeper. I can do that. He reached for her hand, his grip warm and slightly rough. I chose you because you seemed strong and capable, someone who could handle this life. But I did not consider that strength and capability do not mean you do not need kindness and companionship. That was wrong of me. Thank you for saying that. Sarah squeezed his hand gently. I want this marriage to work, Thomas. I truly do. Then we will make it work, together. He leaned forward and kissed her, a real kiss this time, not the brief peck from their wedding day. It was tentative and slightly awkward, but it was an attempt at real connection. That night, Thomas finally consummated their marriage. It was not passionate or romantic, but it was gentle and considerate, and afterwards he held her as they fell asleep. Sarah told herself this was progress, that maybe they could build something meaningful together if they both tried. But when she closed her eyes, it was Nathan's face she saw, and guilt washed over her in waves. Over the following weeks, Thomas made good on his promise to be more attentive. He began lingering over breakfast, asking about her plans for the day. He told her about the work he was doing on the ranch, explaining the challenges of managing cattle and dealing with the increasingly problematic rustlers. He even took her riding one afternoon, showing her the full extent of their land, pointing out landmarks and telling her stories about his childhood. Sarah appreciated the efforts and responded in kind, sharing more of herself, her past, her thoughts. They were building something, a foundation of companionship if not passion. It was more than she had dared hope for in the beginning. Nathan kept his distance. The few times they were forced to interact, he was scrupulously polite and careful never to let their eyes meet for too long. Emily reported that he had been spending more time away from the ranch, staying overnight in town occasionally, though she did not know what he did there. Sarah told herself she was glad for the space, glad that Nathan was moving on with his own life instead of fixating on his brother's marriage. But late at night, when Thomas snored beside her, she found herself wondering where Nathan was, what he was thinking, whether he ever thought of her. 2 months after the wedding, Sarah realized her monthly courses had not come. She waited another week to be sure, then another, hope and trepidation warring within her. Finally, she confided in Emily, who let out a squeal of delight and hugged her tight. "Oh, Sarah, a baby, Thomas will be so pleased. He has wanted children for so long." Emily was practically bouncing with excitement. "When will you tell him?" "Tonight, at supper." Sarah pressed a hand to her still flat stomach, trying to imagine a child growing there. "I wanted to be certain first." That evening she waited until after the meal when the men were relaxing with coffee. "Thomas, I have something to tell you," she began, her voice slightly unsteady. "I am with child, about 2 months along, I think." The silence that followed was heavy. Thomas stared at her, his expression unreadable, while Emily beamed and Nathan went very still, his coffee cup frozen halfway to his mouth. "You are sure?" Thomas finally asked. "As sure as I can be without seeing a doctor. All the signs are there." A slow smile spread across Thomas's face, transforming his usually stern features. "That is good news, very good news." He stood and came around the table to her, placing a hand on her shoulder. "You have made me very happy, Sarah." Emily chattered excitedly about baby clothes and preparations, while Thomas discussed practical matters like ensuring they had a doctor on hand for the birth. Sarah found herself smiling, caught up in the positive response. Only Nathan remained silent. When she risked a glance at him, his face was pale, his jaw tight with some emotion she could not name. He stood abruptly, muttering something about checking on the horses, and left without looking back. Sarah's joy dimmed. She had known the news would affect him, but seeing the pain so clearly on his face made her own heart ache. This was what she had wanted, what she needed to secure her place here. A child would cement her marriage to Thomas, would give her purpose and focus beyond the confusing feelings that still pulled at her when Nathan was near. But the guilt remained, irrational as it was. She had done nothing wrong, had committed to her marriage, and was building a life with Thomas. Yet some part of her grieved for what could never be, for the connection she had felt with Nathan in those early days, for the impossible alternative he had offered and she had refused. That night in bed, Thomas was more tender than usual, his hand resting protectively on her stomach. "I will build a cradle," he said into the darkness. "My father built one for each of us. It is tradition." "That sounds lovely." Sarah covered his hand with hers. "The baby will be lucky to have such a thoughtful father." "I never thought I would have this. A family of my own, I mean." After Ma and Pa died, it was just about survival, keeping the ranch going, taking care of Nathan and Emily. His voice was reflective in the darkness. "You have given me something I did not know I was missing, Sarah." The words were perhaps the most romantic thing he had ever said to her, and Sarah felt genuine affection bloom in her chest. Maybe they could not have the passionate love story some people had, but they could have this: partnership, respect, shared purpose in raising a child. It would have to be enough. The pregnancy progressed normally. Sarah suffered through morning sickness with Emily's patient help, then emerged into the second trimester feeling better than she had in months. Her body changed, her waist thickening, her breasts growing tender. Thomas treated her like spun glass, insisting she rest more and do less work, though Sarah chafed at the restrictions. Nathan was rarely around. He had taken on more responsibilities for the neighboring Hayes Ranch, helping them with their roundup and staying in their bunkhouse more often than not. When he did come home, he was polite and distant, never quite meeting Sarah's eyes. Emily confided that Nathan had been courting Alice Peterson, the daughter of the general store owner, taking her to church socials and dinner at the restaurant. Sarah told herself she was pleased, that it was good Nathan was moving forward with his life, building connections of his own. The stab of jealousy she felt at the news was irrational and shameful, and she pushed it down ruthlessly. By her 5th month, Sarah's pregnancy was obvious to everyone. The neighboring women brought gifts and advice, sharing stories of their own pregnancies and births with the kind of frank detail that both horrified and prepared her. Mrs. Hayes had become a particular friend, visiting weekly and helping Sarah prepare the nursery in one of the spare rooms upstairs. "You are glowing, dear," Mrs. Hayes said one afternoon as they sorted through baby clothes neighbors had donated. "Thomas must be beside himself with pride. He is very pleased." Sarah folded a tiny gown, marveling at the size. "He is building a cradle. He works on it every evening after supper." "That man has softened considerably since you arrived. Used to be he never smiled, never talked about anything but cattle and weather. Now he is almost pleasant." Mrs. Hayes smiled knowingly. Love does that to a person. Sarah did not correct her assumption that love was involved. Thomas cared for her in his way, and she had affection for him. It was not the sweeping passion of romantic novels, but it was real and growing. That would suffice. The rustler problems that had been simmering in the background escalated in Sarah's 6th month. Several ranches lost significant numbers of cattle to organized thieves who struck at night and disappeared into the hills. Thomas and the other ranchers organized patrols, with men staying out overnight to guard the herds. Nathan returned to help with this, and Sarah could not help but notice he looked thinner, more tired than she remembered. Whatever he had been doing at the Hayes Ranch, it had taken a toll. He avoided the house as much as possible, taking meals with the ranch hands and sleeping in the bunkhouse. One evening, when Thomas was out on patrol and Emily had gone to bed early with a headache, Sarah found herself alone in the parlor when Nathan came in for a cup of coffee. He froze when he saw her, clearly debating whether to retreat. "You do not have to leave," Sarah said quietly. "I will not bite." He managed a weak smile and continued to the kitchen, emerging moments later with a steaming cup. Instead of leaving immediately, he surprised her by sitting in the chair across from her, his expression weary. "How are you feeling? With the baby, I mean." "Tired mostly." "And enormous." She smoothed her hands over her swollen belly. "But the doctor says everything is progressing normally." "That is good." He stared into his coffee. "Thomas must be excited." "He is. He talks about the baby constantly, makes plans for teaching him to ride and manage cattle." Sarah smiled despite the awkwardness between them. "He assumes it will be a boy, though I have tried to tell him it could just as easily be a girl. Knowing Thomas, he will be surprised but adapt quickly if it is a girl. He is good at adapting to circumstances." There was something bitter in Nathan's tone. "Nathan, can I ask you something?" Sarah waited until he looked at her, those storm-gray eyes finally meeting hers. "Why did you stay away for so long? Emily said you were helping the Hayes family, but it seemed like more than that. Like you were avoiding coming home." He was quiet for a long moment, his jaw working. "It was easier to be away. Easier to not see you every day, watch your belly grow with my brother's child, pretend everything was fine." The honesty of the answer took her breath away. "Nathan, I know. I know I have no right to feel this way. You are Thomas's wife, and you are building a life with him. You are doing exactly what you should be doing." He set down his coffee cup with careful precision, but knowing something is right does not make it hurt less. Sarah's throat tightened with emotion. "I never wanted to hurt you. You have been nothing but kind to me since the moment I arrived. You deserve to be happy, Nathan." "I will be, eventually." He stood, taking his cup with him. "Alice is a sweet girl. She would make a good wife. Do you love her?" The question escaped before Sarah could stop it. Nathan looked at her for a long moment, his expression unbearably sad. "No, but maybe that is for the best. Love seems to bring more pain than joy in my experience." He left without another word, and Sarah sat alone in the parlor, tears sliding down her cheeks. She had done this. Her choices, her presence, had caused this good man pain. The guilt was crushing. When Thomas returned hours later, cold and tired from patrol, she held him tighter than usual, grateful for his solid presence, his uncomplicated affection. This was her life. This was what she had chosen. She needed to make peace with it and stop looking back at roads not taken. The rustlers were finally caught in Sarah's 7th month, a violent confrontation that resulted in 2 of the thieves being killed and 3 others captured. Thomas came home with a gash on his arm from a knife and a grim satisfaction that justice had been served. Sarah tended his wound with shaking hands, horrified by how close he had come to serious injury or worse. "You have to be more careful," she scolded, bandaging his arm. "You have a family to think about now. You cannot take such risks. A man protects what is his. That includes his land and his livelihood." But Thomas looked pleased by her concern, his hand covering hers. "I will be more careful, I promise." With the rustler threat eliminated, life on the ranch settled into a more peaceful rhythm. Nathan returned to working full-time on their ranch, though he still maintained his careful distance from Sarah. She heard through Emily that he had stopped courting Alice Peterson, claiming they were not well-suited, and she hated the small bloom of hope that news created in her chest. She was 8 months pregnant now, large and ungainly, her back aching constantly and sleep elusive. Thomas fussed over her, the cradle he had built installed in the nursery, baby clothes washed and folded and waiting. Emily was nearly as excited as Thomas, talking constantly about becoming an aunt. One afternoon, Sarah was hanging laundry despite Emily's protests that she should rest, when she felt the first sharp pain low in her belly. She froze, hands gripping the clothesline, breathing through it. It passed, and she told herself it was nothing, just the aches and pains that came with late pregnancy. But an hour later, another pain came, stronger this time, and then another. She made it into the house before her water broke, calling for Emily with a voice tight with fear. What followed was hours of intense labor, the pain unlike anything Sarah had experienced. Emily stayed with her, holding her hand and wiping her face with cool cloths, while Thomas paced outside the room and one of the ranch hands rode for the doctor. Mrs. Hayes arrived and took charge, her calm competence reassuring. The doctor made it in time to deliver the baby, a tiny girl with a strong set of lungs who screamed her arrival into the world. Sarah wept with relief and exhaustion as the baby was cleaned and placed in her arms, marveling at the perfect tiny features, the delicate fingers that gripped her own. "A daughter," Thomas said, his voice thick with emotion as he looked down at them both. "A beautiful daughter." They named her Clara Mee Zimmerman, and she became the center of the household's universe. Thomas was surprisingly gentle with the tiny baby, holding her with careful reverence. Emily was completely besotted, volunteering to help with every task. Even the ranch hands softened when they saw her, offering shy congratulations and small gifts. Nathan came to see Clara when she was 3 days old, bringing a hand-carved wooden rattle. He stood in the doorway of the nursery watching as Sarah fed the baby, his expression complex and guarded. "She is beautiful," he said quietly. "Congratulations. Thank you, and thank you for the rattle. It is lovely." Sarah adjusted Clara's position, loving the weight of her in her arms. "Would you like to hold her?" He looked startled by the offer, then cautiously crossed the room. Sarah placed Clara carefully in his arms, showing him how to support her head. He stared down at the baby with such tender wonder that Sarah's throat tightened with emotion. "Hello, little one," Nathan murmured, his finger stroking Clara's soft cheek. "Welcome to the world." Clara's eyes, still the indeterminate blue of newborns, seemed to focus on his face, and she made a small cooing sound. Nathan smiled, a real smile that transformed his features, and for a moment Sarah saw what he would be like as a father, the gentleness and love he would offer his own children. The moment was both beautiful and painful, and Sarah had to look away. Nathan handed Clara back after a few minutes, his expression shuddering closed again. "I should let you rest. I just wanted to meet her." After he left, Sarah held Clara close, breathing in her sweet baby scent, trying to ground herself in the reality of her life. She had a husband who cared for her, a beautiful daughter, a home and security. She was building the future she had come here to find. The confusing feelings for her husband's brother would fade with time. They had to. She would focus on her family, on Clara, on being the best wife and mother she could be. That would be enough. It had to be enough. Clara thrived, growing from a tiny newborn into a chubby, happy baby with Thomas's dark hair and Sarah's blue eyes. She brought joy to everyone she encountered, her ready smiles and cheerful disposition making her the darling of the ranch. Sarah's days were consumed with caring for her, the endless cycle of feeding and changing and soothing. She had never been happier or more exhausted. Thomas was a devoted father, spending his evenings holding Clara, singing to her in his gravelly off-key voice, marveling at every small development. The stern, practical man Sarah had married had been transformed by fatherhood, softened in ways she had not anticipated. Their marriage had settled into something comfortable and pleasant. Thomas still was not romantic or demonstrative, but he was kind and thoughtful, a good provider and father. Sarah had affection for him, respected him, enjoyed his company. If it was not the passionate love of romantic stories, it was still more than many women had. Nathan had taken a job with a ranch 2 counties over, helping to establish their breeding program. He was gone for weeks at a time, returning only briefly before leaving again. When he was home, he made time to visit with Clara, bringing her small gifts and making her giggle with silly faces. But he and Sarah barely spoke beyond polite pleasantries, the connection that had once existed between them buried under layers of careful distance. Sarah told herself it was for the best, and believed it most days. Clara was 6 months old when Emily announced she was being courted by a young man from town, the schoolteacher Marcus Sullivan. He began coming to Sunday dinners, a pleasant, educated man who clearly adored Emily. Sarah was happy for her, seeing the way Emily glowed when Marcus was near, the way he looked at her with unconcealed affection. This was what love looked like, Sarah thought. This eager joy, this light in the eyes, this sense that the world was brighter when the beloved was present. She had never felt that way about Thomas, would never have that particular magic. But she had other good things, and she was grateful for them. The wedding was planned for the following spring. Emily threw herself into preparations with enthusiastic energy, and Sarah helped as much as she could while managing an increasingly mobile Clara, who had started crawling and getting into everything. Nathan came home for the wedding, thinner than Sarah remembered, with new lines around his eyes. He brought a young woman with him, introducing her as Lily Martinez, the daughter of the ranch owner where he had been working. She was pretty and vivacious, with dark curly hair and a ready laugh, and she clearly thought very highly of Nathan. Sarah felt the now familiar stab of jealousy and hated herself for it. She had no claim on Nathan, no right to feel anything about his romantic interests. She was married to his brother, had a child with him, had built a life. Nathan deserved to find happiness with someone who could give him what he needed. The wedding was beautiful. Emily looked radiant in her white dress, and Marcus could not take his eyes off her throughout the ceremony. Thomas gave his sister away with obvious emotion, and even Nathan smiled, genuine and warm, as he watched his little sister marry. At the reception, Sarah danced with Thomas, with Marcus, with several of the other ranchers. She was taking a break, bouncing Clara on her hip while the baby tried to grab at her necklace when Nathan approached. "May I?" he gestured to Clara. Sarah handed her over, watching as Nathan lifted the baby high, making her shriek with delighted laughter. Clara adored her uncle, always reaching for him when he was near. "She has missed you," Sarah said. "She looks for you sometimes when she hears a man's voice." "I missed her too." Nathan blew a raspberry on Clara's neck, making her giggle. "She has gotten so big, I can hardly believe it. She will be walking before we know it." Sarah watched them together, her heart aching with complicated emotions. "How have you been? You look tired." "The work is demanding, but good. I am learning a lot." He settled Clara against his shoulder, her head drooping as sleep overtook her. "Lily's father is one of the best horse breeders in Texas. Working with him has been valuable. Lily seems very nice." Sarah tried to make her voice casual and was not sure she succeeded. "She is. Very sweet and lively. She makes me laugh." Nathan's hand rubbed gentle circles on Clara's back. "Her father has hinted that he would approve if I courted her seriously." "Will you?" Sarah did not want to ask, did not want to know, but could not stop herself. Nathan looked at her then, really looked at her for the first time in months. "Would it bother you if I did?" The question hung between them, dangerous and loaded with meaning. Sarah knew she should say no, should encourage him to find happiness with Lily or anyone else. But the lie would not come. "I have no right to be bothered," she said instead, a non-answer. "That is not what I asked." They stood frozen, Clara sleeping peacefully between them, the sounds of the wedding celebration fading into background noise. Sarah felt like she was standing on the edge of a precipice, one word away from something that could destroy everything she had built. "Nathan, there you are." Thomas's voice broke the moment as he approached, slightly flushed from dancing. "I have been looking for you, Sarah. Mrs. Hayes wants to discuss Clara's christening. She has very strong opinions about appropriate godparents." Sarah took Clara from Nathan's arms, the baby barely stirring at the transfer. "Of course. Excuse me." She walked away without looking back, but she could feel Nathan's eyes on her the entire way across the yard. That night, after the guests had gone home and Emily and Marcus had left for their wedding trip to Austin, Sarah lay awake next to Thomas, staring at the ceiling. "Thomas, can I ask you something?" "Of course." He sounded sleepy but attentive. "You ever regret marrying me? Wonder if you should have chosen differently?" The question had been building for weeks, months maybe, and it finally spilled out. Thomas rolled onto his side to face her in the darkness. "Why would you ask that?" "Because our marriage is not like what Emily has with Marcus. We do not have that spark, that deep connection." Sarah kept her eyes on the ceiling, unable to look at him. "I sometimes wonder if you feel cheated of something better." "Sarah, look at me." When she did, his expression was serious but gentle. "I chose you because I thought we could build a good life together, and we have. We have a beautiful daughter, a well-run home, respect and affection for each other. That is more than many marriages have. But is it enough?" She needed to know, needed to understand if he was satisfied or merely settling. Thomas considered the question carefully. "When I placed that advertisement, I was not looking for passion or romance. I wanted a partner, someone capable and strong who could help me build something lasting. You have been everything I asked for and more. You have given me a daughter I love more than I thought possible. You have softened my rough edges, made this house a home. Is our marriage perfect? No, but it is good, Sarah. It is enough for me. Is it enough for you? Was it?" Sarah thought about the security she had, the comfort and stability. She thought about Clara's bright smile and Thomas's steady presence. And then, unbidden, she thought about Nathan's storm-gray eyes and the way her heart raced when he was near. "Yes," she said finally, choosing to believe it. "It is enough." Thomas kissed her forehead and settled back to sleep, clearly satisfied with her answer. But Sarah lay awake for hours, wondering if she had just told the biggest lie of her life. Nathan left 2 days later, returning to the Martinez ranch with Lily. Over the following months, letters arrived regularly, and Emily shared the news that Nathan and Lily were officially courting. Sarah smiled and said all the right things, expressed happiness for him, and tried to mean it. Clara took her first steps just before her first birthday, walking unsteadily into Thomas's waiting arms while the family cheered. She was talking now, too, calling Sarah Mama and Thomas Dada and demanding up when she wanted to be held. She had Thomas wrapped around her tiny finger, and Sarah often found them together in the evening, Clara sitting on her father's lap while he told her stories about the ranch animals. Life settled into a comfortable pattern. Sarah and Emily managed the household together, though Emily now spent significant time in town with Marcus, who had taken a position as the schoolmaster. Thomas ran the ranch with capable efficiency, the herd growing, the profits healthy. They talked about expanding, buying more land, building a larger house. Sarah was content most days. She had what she had come to Texas seeking: security, purpose, a family. The restlessness that sometimes plagued her, the sense that something was missing, could be ignored or suppressed. This was her life, and it was a good one. Then Nathan came home with news that changed everything. It was a warm afternoon in late summer when he rode up to the house, dismounting quickly and striding inside with purpose. Sarah was in the kitchen preserving peaches with Emily when he entered, his expression troubled. "Where is Thomas?" "Out checking the south fence line." "What is wrong?" Sarah set down the knife she had been using, alarm rising at his tone. "I need to talk to him. To both of you, actually." "It is important." Nathan pulled off his hat, running a hand through his hair. "Is Clara napping?" "Yes, she went down about an hour ago." "Nathan, you are scaring me. What has happened?" Sarah moved toward him, instinct overriding caution. Before he could answer, Thomas came through the door, dusty from riding. "Nathan, I saw your horse. Is everything all right? We need to talk, all of us." Nathan gestured to the parlor. "Please." They gathered there, tension crackling in the air. Nathan paced for a moment before stopping in front of the fireplace, his back to them. "I have been offered an opportunity. A very good opportunity. The Martinez family wants me to become a partner in their ranch, to help expand their breeding operation. It is everything I have been working toward, a chance to build something of my own." "That is wonderful news," Emily exclaimed. "We should celebrate. There is more." Nathan turned to face them. "The partnership comes with certain expectations. Mr. Martinez has made it clear that he wants me to marry Lily, to become part of the family officially. He has given me until the end of the year to make a decision." Sarah felt her heart drop into her stomach. This was it then. Nathan would marry Lily, move away permanently, build a life separate from them. It was what should happen, what she had been telling herself she wanted. So why did it feel like the world was crumbling? "Will you accept?" Thomas asked, his expression neutral. Nathan's eyes found Sarah's, held them with an intensity that made her breath catch. "I do not know. That is why I am here. I need to decide what I want my future to look like." "It seems straightforward," Thomas said. "It is an excellent opportunity. Lily is a good woman. You would be foolish to turn it down." "Would I?" Nathan's gaze had not left Sarah's face. "There are other considerations." Emily stood abruptly. "I just remembered I need to check on Clara. Excuse me." She fled the room, clearly sensing the undercurrent of tension. Thomas looked between Nathan and Sarah, his expression hardening. What considerations? Nathan finally looked away from Sarah to meet his brother's eyes. I cannot marry Lily because I am in love with someone else. I have been for almost 2 years now. Since the day I picked her up from the stagecoach in Georgetown. The words fell into the room like stones into still water, rippling out with devastating effect. Sarah could not breathe, could not move, could only stare at Nathan as he finally spoke the truth they had both been avoiding. Thomas stood slowly, his face flushing with anger. "You are in love with my wife." It was not a question, but Nathan answered anyway. "Yes, how dare you?" Thomas's voice was low and dangerous. "How dare you stand in my house and admit this?" "I am not proud of it, Thomas. God knows I have tried to stop feeling this way. I left, stayed away for months, courted another woman. Nothing helped. I cannot marry Lily when I am in love with Sarah. It would not be fair to her." "Fair? You want to talk about fair?" Thomas advanced on his brother, and Sarah finally found her voice. "Stop. Please, both of you, just stop." She stood, her legs shaking. "Nathan, you should not have said this. It changes nothing. I am married to Thomas. I have a child with him. Whatever you feel, whatever I—" She could not finish the sentence, could not admit her own feelings aloud. "Whatever you what, Sarah?" Nathan's eyes were fierce. "Whatever you feel for me. Because I know you do feel something. I see it every time you look at me, every time we are in the same room. This is not one-sided." "It does not matter," she was shouting now, desperate to make him understand. "I made a choice. I married Thomas. I am building a life with him. We have a daughter together. I cannot just throw that away because of feelings. I am not asking you to throw anything away. I am not asking you to leave Thomas or abandon Clara." Nathan moved closer, his voice softening. "I am just asking if you feel the same way I do, if I am alone in this, or if there is something between us that might have been in different circumstances." Sarah looked at Thomas, saw the hurt and anger and betrayal on his face, and knew that answering honestly would destroy him. But the lie would not come. "Of course I care about you, Nathan. You are kind and thoughtful, and you have been nothing but good to me. But caring is not enough. I am married to your brother. That has to mean something." "It means everything," Thomas said, his voice rough. "It means you belong to me, Sarah. We made vows before God. Nathan, you are my brother. How could you do this to me? I did not plan to fall in love with her. I tried to talk you out of marrying her, tried to convince her to leave before the wedding. When that did not work, I stayed away. I kept my distance. I never acted on my feelings, never betrayed your marriage." Nathan's hands clenched into fists at his sides. "But I cannot keep lying to myself. I cannot marry another woman when my heart belongs to your wife. Then do not marry her. Turn down the partnership. Stay single. But do not stand here and expect me to sympathize with your feelings for Sarah." Thomas moved to stand beside his wife, his hand possessive on her shoulder. "She is mine. She will always be mine." The words, spoken with such absolute certainty, made something inside Sarah rebel. She was not property to be owned, not a prize to be claimed. But before she could voice this, Clara's cry came from upstairs, cutting through the tension. "I need to see to her." Sarah pulled away from Thomas and headed for the stairs, grateful for the excuse to escape. Behind her, she heard the men's voices rising again, harsh words and accusations. She closed Clara's door behind her, shutting it out, and lifted her daughter from the crib. Clara was hot and fussy, her forehead warm. Sarah held her close, checking her over, relieved to find nothing more serious than new teeth coming in. "Mama," Clara whimpered, clinging to her. "I know, sweet girl. I know it hurts." Sarah rocked her gently, tears sliding down her own cheeks. "Everything hurts sometimes." She stayed upstairs for a long time, tending to Clara, avoiding the confrontation below. When she finally descended, Nathan was gone and Thomas sat alone in the parlor, a glass of whiskey in his hand. "He left," Thomas said without looking at her. "Rode back to the Martinez ranch. Said he needed time to think." Sarah sat in the chair across from him, unsure what to say. "Did you know that he was in love with you?" Thomas's voice was carefully controlled, but she could hear the hurt beneath it. "I suspected. But he never said anything before today, never acted inappropriately." "And you, do you love him?" The question was quiet, almost defeated. Sarah closed her eyes, searching for truth in the tangle of her feelings. "I do not know. I have feelings for him, yes. But I chose you, Thomas. I married you. I have never regretted that choice. Even though you might have loved Nathan if you had met him first, if he had been the one to write those letters." Thomas finally looked at her, and she saw genuine pain in his eyes. "But he was not. You were. We cannot build a life on what might have been." Sarah leaned forward, desperate to make him understand. "I care about you, Thomas. You have been good to me, given me a home and security and a beautiful daughter. That means something. It means everything. But it is not love. Not the kind of love Nathan feels for you or Emily has with Marcus." He drained his whiskey. "I knew when I married you that it was not a love match. I told myself that did not matter, that practical partnership was better anyway. But now, I wonder if I denied us both something important by being so focused on practicality." "Thomas, I am not angry with you, Sarah. You have done nothing wrong. You have been exactly the wife you promised to be." He set down his glass with careful precision. "But I am angry with Nathan. He had no right to put this on us, to disrupt what we have built. Family is supposed to be loyal, supposed to support each other. He has betrayed that." Sarah did not know how to respond. Part of her agreed that Nathan should have kept his feelings to himself. But another part, a part she was afraid to examine too closely, was grateful he had finally spoken the truth. The following days were tense and uncomfortable. Nathan did not return, and Emily reported through letters that he had accepted the Martinez partnership and was planning to marry Lily in the spring. Sarah told herself this was good news, that Nathan was moving on with his life as he should. But the knowledge sat heavy in her chest, a constant ache she could not shake. Thomas threw himself into ranch work, leaving early and returning late, avoiding extended time with Sarah beyond the necessary. They were polite with each other, cordial, but the easy companionship they had built was fractured. Clara, sensitive to tension, became clingy and fussy, sensing that something was wrong even if she could not understand what. Sarah felt like she was walking through thick fog, her days blurring together, the joy she had found in her life muted. She went through the motions of her routines, but it all felt hollow. One evening, about 2 weeks after Nathan's confession, Thomas came home early and asked Sarah to walk with him. They left Clara with Emily and headed toward the creek that ran through the property, walking in silence until they reached the water's edge. "I have been doing a lot of thinking," Thomas began, skipping a stone across the water's surface. "About us, about Nathan, about what makes a good marriage." Sarah waited, anxiety coiling in her stomach. "When I married you, I thought I knew exactly what I wanted. A practical partnership, mutual respect, shared goals. I thought love was unnecessary, even counterproductive." He picked up another stone, rolling it between his fingers. "But watching Emily with Marcus, seeing how happy they are, I started to realize I might have been wrong." "Thomas, I do not know what you want me to say." "I am not asking you to say anything. I am asking you to listen." He turned to face her. "I have been a good husband in practical ways. I provided for you, protected you, gave you security, but I have not been good at the emotional parts of marriage. I have not told you how much I value you, how grateful I am for everything you bring to our family. I have not made you feel cherished or important beyond your usefulness." Tears pricked Sarah's eyes. "You have been a good husband, Thomas. You have given me more than I had any right to expect. But not what you deserved, not what Nathan would have given you if circumstances were different." Thomas's voice was rough with emotion. "I see now why you might have feelings for him. He sees you as a person, not just a role to fill. He cares about your happiness, not just your functionality." "What are you saying?" Sarah's heart was racing. "I am saying I want to try to be better, to be the kind of husband who makes you happy, not just secure." He took her hands in his larger, calloused ones. "I cannot compete with Nathan's romantic nature, and I will never be the kind of man who writes poetry or makes grand gestures. But I can try to show you that you matter to me as more than just the mother of my child or the manager of my household." Sarah looked up at this man she had married, seeing him truly perhaps for the first time. He was trying, in his awkward, practical way, to bridge the distance between them. It was not the passionate declaration Nathan had made, but it was real and honest and brave in its own way. "I would like that," she said softly. "I would like us to try." Thomas pulled her into his arms, holding her with a tenderness that surprised her. "I do care about you, Sarah. I am not good at saying it or showing it, but I do. You have become important to me in ways I did not anticipate." They stood there as the sun set, two people trying to build something real from a foundation of practicality and choice. It was not perfect, not the sweeping romance of storybooks, but it was theirs. Over the following weeks, Thomas made good on his promise. He came home earlier, spent more time with Sarah and Clara, talked about things beyond ranch business. He asked about Sarah's day, her thoughts, her feelings about various matters. He brought her small gifts from town, wildflowers from the fields, a book he thought she might enjoy. Sarah responded to his efforts, trying to open her heart more fully to him, to appreciate what they had rather than mourning what might have been. They talked more, laughed together occasionally, began to build something that resembled a genuine partnership beyond mere practicality. Clara flourished with both parents more present, her vocabulary expanding daily, her personality emerging bright and bold. She loved the ranch animals, especially the horses, and would stand by the fence for hours watching them, demanding "Horsey, horsey," until someone lifted her up for a better view. Sarah's feelings for Nathan did not disappear, but they faded into background noise, something she acknowledged but did not dwell on. It helped that he stayed away, his visits home infrequent and brief. When he did come, he was polite and distant, treating Sarah with the same courtesy he would show any of Thomas's acquaintances. Emily reported that Nathan's wedding to Lily was beautiful, that they looked happy together. Sarah smiled and said all the appropriate things, and tried not to think about what she had lost, or rather, what she had never really had. Life moved forward as it does. Clara turned 2, then 3. Thomas and Sarah welcomed a second child, a son they named James Thomas Zimmerman, born in the spring of Clara's 3rd year. This time, Sarah knew what to expect from labor and delivery, and while it was still difficult, it was less frightening. Thomas was present throughout, holding her hand, whispering encouragement. James was a calm baby, easier than Clara had been with Thomas's dark hair and eyes. Clara adored her baby brother, wanting to help with everything, getting jealous when Sarah had to nurse him. Thomas was equally proud of both children, often found with one on each knee, telling them stories about the ranch. Their marriage had settled into something warm and companionable. Sarah had affection for Thomas, respected him, appreciated the life they were building together. If it was not passionate love, it was something solid and real. She had stopped longing for what might have been with Nathan and started appreciating what she had with Thomas, or so she told herself. Then Nathan's wife died, and everything shifted again. The news came in a letter from Emily, now married for several years and living in town with Marcus and their infant son. Lily had died giving birth to a stillborn daughter. Nathan was devastated, barely functioning according to reports. The Martinez family was rallying around him, but he was unreachable in his grief. Sarah read the letter with shaking hands, her heart breaking for Nathan's loss. Whatever complicated feelings existed between them, she would never have wished this kind of pain on him. To lose a wife and child in one terrible blow was unimaginable. "I should go to him," Thomas said when Sarah shared the news. "He is my brother. Whatever issues we have, he needs family right now." "We should all go," Sarah said impulsively. "Emily said the Martinez ranch is about a day's journey. We could take the children, stay a few days, help however we can." Thomas looked surprised but nodded. "All right, we will leave tomorrow morning." The journey to the Martinez ranch was long but manageable. Clara, now 3, enjoyed the adventure of riding in the wagon, pointing out every bird and cow they passed. James, just 6 months old, slept most of the way in Sarah's arms. The Martinez ranch was impressive, larger even than their own, with extensive horse pastures and well-maintained buildings. But the atmosphere was somber, grief hanging heavy over everything. They were greeted by Mr. Martinez, an older man with kind eyes made sad by recent tragedy. "Nathan is in the house," he said quietly after welcoming them. "He barely speaks, barely eats. Maybe seeing family will help." They found Nathan in what had clearly been his and Lily's bedroom, sitting in a chair by the window, staring out at nothing. He looked terrible, thinner than Sarah had ever seen him, his face haggard with grief and lack of sleep. When Thomas entered, Nathan barely glanced up. "Nathan." Thomas crossed to his brother, placing a hand on his shoulder. "I am so sorry. We came as soon as we heard." She was so excited about the baby. Nathan's voice was rough, unused. She had already picked out names, made plans, and then everything went wrong so fast, I could not save her. Could not save either of them. Sarah's throat tightened with sympathy. She had been through childbirth twice, knew the risks, the way things could turn dangerous in moments. "It is not your fault, Nathan. These things happen sometimes, no matter what we do." He finally looked at her, and the desolation in his eyes made her breath catch. "I should have loved her better. She deserved to be loved completely, not by someone whose heart was divided. Maybe if I had loved her more, she would have survived. Maybe my half-hearted feelings were not enough to sustain her." "That is not how it works," Thomas said firmly. "Childbirth is dangerous. Women die regardless of how much their husbands love them. You know this, Nathan. You are not thinking clearly." "How can I think clearly? Everything is gone. My wife, my child, any hope of building a family, all gone." Nathan dropped his head into his hands. "I do not know how to move forward from here." They stayed at the Martinez ranch for 5 days, Thomas helping with ranch work while Sarah did what she could to help the household. She prepared meals Nathan would not eat, cleaned rooms he would not leave, tried to offer comfort he would not accept. Clara tried to cheer him up with her chattering and drawings, and sometimes Sarah caught him almost smiling at her antics before remembering his grief. On the last evening before they were to head home, Sarah found Nathan in the barn, checking on a mare who was due to foal. The barn was quiet and warm, smelling of hay and horses, and for a moment Sarah stood in the doorway watching him work, remembering the first day they met when he had collected her from town. "You are good with horses," she said softly, announcing her presence. Nathan did not look up from examining the mare's belly. "It is easier than being good with people. You are good with people too. You were good to me from the very beginning." Sarah moved closer, stroking the mare's neck. "I remember how kind you were, how concerned about whether I was making the right choice. I was right to be concerned. You could have had better than what Thomas was offering. He finally looked at her, his eyes haunted. You could have had better than what I offered Lily. She deserved someone who loved her without reservation, and I could not give her that. I tried, God knows I tried, but my heart was already given to someone I could not have. Nathan, you cannot blame yourself for this. Loving someone does not prevent childbirth complications. Maybe not. But it might have made the time we had together better. She knew, you know. Lily knew I did not love her the way I should have. She never said anything, but I could see it in her eyes sometimes. She wondered why I was not more affectionate, why I sometimes seemed distant. And now she is gone, and I will never be able to make it right. Sarah did not know what to say, how to comfort this kind of profound regret. She reached out instinctively, placing her hand over his on the mare's back. You were a good husband to her. You provided for her, were faithful to her, tried to make her happy. That is more than many women get. But not as much as she deserved, not as much as you deserve. Nathan turned his hand under hers, gripping it tightly. I have made such a mess of everything, Sarah. I loved you when I should have been focused on Lily. I married her when I knew I could not give her my whole heart. And now she is dead and you are married to my brother, and there is no path forward that does not end in more pain. Then we stop walking painful paths. We accept what is and find peace with it. Sarah wanted to pull her hand away but could not make herself do it. You will heal from this, Nathan. It does not feel like it now, but you will. And you will build a new life, find new purpose. You are too good a man to be destroyed by tragedy. I do not feel like a good man. I feel like someone who has failed everyone who depended on him. Nathan's grip on her hand tightened. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if you had married me instead of Thomas? If we had chosen differently? Sometimes, Sarah admitted quietly. But wondering changes nothing. I married Thomas. We have 2 beautiful children together. We have built a good life. I cannot wish that away, even for the possibility of something different with you. I am not asking you to wish it away. I am asking if you think we might have been happy together. Sarah looked at this man she had loved in secret for years, this kind and thoughtful person whose eyes had always seen her, really seen her. Yes, she whispered. I think we might have been very happy, but that does not change what is. They stood there in the quiet barn, hands joined, acknowledging the truth they had both been avoiding. Then Thomas's voice calling for Sarah broke the moment, and she pulled her hand away, stepping back. We leave tomorrow morning, she said, her voice unsteady. Please take care of yourself, Nathan. Come home when you are ready. Your family misses you. She left before he could respond, before she could do something foolish that would destroy everything she had built. Outside the barn, Thomas waited, Clara in his arms. There you are. I thought we had lost you. Just checking on the mare. She should foal any day now. Sarah took Clara from him, hugging her daughter close. We should get the children to bed. It will be an early morning tomorrow. That night, as Sarah lay beside Thomas in the guest room, she heard the sound of someone riding away fast. Looking out the window, she saw Nathan on horseback, disappearing into the darkness. He did not return before they left the next morning, and Mr. Martinez reported that he had gone to stay with friends in San Antonio, needing time away from the ranch where he had built a life with Lily. The journey home was quiet, Clara sleeping against Sarah's shoulder while James nursed contentedly. Thomas drove the wagon, his expression thoughtful. Nathan is in a bad way, he said after several miles of silence. I have never seen him like that. He loved his wife and lost her horribly. Of course he is devastated. Sarah kept her eyes on the horizon. He loved Lily, yes, but not the way he loves you. Thomas's words were matter of fact, without accusation. That has to make his grief even more complicated. He failed to give Lily what she deserved because of his feelings for you. Sarah felt tears burn her eyes. That is not fair to either of us. Nathan made his choice when he married Lily. I made mine when I married you. We both committed to those choices. And yet the feelings remained. Thomas glanced at her. I am not angry, Sarah, just stating facts. Nathan has been in love with you since the day he met you, and some part of you has always returned those feelings. That is the reality we all live with. What do you want me to say, Thomas? That I wish I had never met Nathan? That I wish my feelings for him did not exist? Sarah's voice rose slightly, careful not to wake the children. I cannot change how I feel. I can only choose what I do about it. And I have chosen you, chosen our marriage, chosen our family. Every single day I make that choice. I know you do, and I appreciate it more than you realize. Thomas reached over and took her hand. I am just saying that I understand Nathan's pain. Loving someone you cannot have while being married to someone else is a special kind of torment. I would not wish it on anyone, not even my brother who betrayed me by falling for my wife. They rode in silence for a while, Sarah processing this unexpected understanding from her usually practical husband. Do you think he will be all right eventually? Nathan is strong. He will survive this, but I do not know if he will ever be truly happy. Thomas squeezed her hand. Some wounds do not heal completely. They just become scars we learn to live with. Sarah feared he was right. Months passed. Nathan stayed in San Antonio, finding work at a large ranch there, sending occasional letters to Emily but rarely coming home. Sarah threw herself into caring for her children and managing the household, trying not to think about him, trying not to worry about whether he was healing or simply surviving. Thomas continued his efforts to build a more emotionally connected marriage. He was not naturally demonstrative, but he tried to show affection in small ways, to share more of himself with Sarah. They talked more in the evenings after the children were in bed, sharing thoughts and stories, building layers of intimacy that had been missing before. Sarah appreciated his efforts and responded in kind, working to open her heart more fully to him. Their marriage grew warmer, more companionable, approaching something that might be called love, even if it was not the passionate variety of romantic novels. It was comfortable and stable, built on shared history and mutual respect. Clara turned 4, precocious and energetic, already reading simple books and helping Sarah with James. James was walking now, getting into everything, laughing with pure delight at the simplest things. Sarah loved being a mother, found deep satisfaction in raising her children, in creating a home filled with warmth and laughter. This was a good life. She needed to remember that, to appreciate what she had rather than longing for impossible alternatives. Then, 2 years after Lily's death, Nathan came home. He rode up to the ranch one afternoon, thinner and more weathered but no longer wearing the haunted expression of deep grief. He had survived his tragedy and emerged changed but whole. Sarah was in the garden with the children when he arrived, Clara picking beans and James trying to eat dirt. She looked up at the sound of hoofbeats and felt her heart stutter when she saw him dismounting. He looked at her across the yard, and for a moment time seemed to stop. Then Clara squealed Uncle Nathan and ran toward him, and the spell was broken. Nathan caught her up in his arms, swinging her around while she laughed with delight. James toddles over as well, and Nathan scooped him up too, holding both children with evident joy. Look how big you have gotten. Nathan's voice was warm as he addressed Clara. You are practically grown. I am 4 now. I can read, Clara announced proudly. Can you? You will have to show me later. Nathan set the children down and approached Sarah, his expression cautious. Hello, Sarah, you look well. So do you. Better than the last time we saw you. Sarah brushed dirt from her skirt, trying to steady her racing pulse. Thomas is out checking the north fence. He should be back soon. Actually, I saw him on my way in. He is heading back now. Nathan's eyes searched her face. How have you been? Really? Before Sarah could answer, Thomas appeared, riding up with a broad smile. Nathan, when did you get in? How long can you stay? The brothers embraced, and Sarah felt some of the tension ease. Whatever complicated history existed between them, there was still genuine affection and brotherhood. Maybe they could all navigate this situation with grace and maturity. Over supper that evening, Nathan shared that he had accepted a permanent position on a ranch near San Antonio and was doing well there. He seemed at peace, no longer carrying the crushing grief that had weighed him down. Sarah was glad for him, wanted him to be happy even if his presence made her own carefully maintained composure feel fragile. After the children were in bed, the adults sat on the porch in the cooling evening air. Emily and Marcus had come for supper, and they all talked about ranch business, town gossip, Emily's pregnancy with her second child. It was pleasant and normal, almost like old times. But when Emily and Marcus left and Thomas went inside to get more coffee, Nathan and Sarah were left alone in the gathering darkness. The silence stretched between them, heavy with everything unsaid. "I am glad you came home," Sarah said finally. "Emily has missed having you around. And Clara and James need to know their uncle." "Just Emily and the children." Nathan's voice was quiet. Sarah did not pretend to misunderstand. "You know I am glad to see you, Nathan, but my gladness comes with a lot of complicated feelings that are better left unexamined." "I know. I am not here to make trouble, Sarah. I am not going to confess my feelings again or ask impossible questions." He leaned against the porch railing, his face half in shadow. "I just want to be part of this family again if Thomas will let me. I have spent 2 years away and I am tired of running from what I feel. I need to learn to live with it instead." "Can you do that? Live with feelings you cannot act on?" Sarah needed to know, needed to understand if they could all coexist peacefully. "I do not know, but I want to try." Nathan looked at her directly. "Losing Lily taught me that life is short and precious. I wasted the time I had with her wishing for something I could not have instead of appreciating what I did have. I do not want to make that mistake again. I want to be present for the life I have, including being an uncle to your children and a brother to Thomas, even if it means seeing you every day and knowing you belong to someone else." Thomas emerged with coffee before Sarah could respond, and the moment passed. But she thought about Nathan's words as she lay in bed that night beside her sleeping husband. Could they really all move forward peacefully? Could Nathan truly be part of their lives without the tension and longing that had marked their earlier interactions? She wanted to believe it was possible. For everyone's sake, she needed to believe it. Nathan stayed at the ranch for several weeks, helping with the roundup and various projects that needed extra hands. He was good with Clara and James, patient and playful, the kind of uncle every child deserved. He and Thomas worked well together, their earlier conflicts seemingly resolved or at least set aside. With Sarah, Nathan was friendly but careful, maintaining appropriate distance. They talked but never alone, never about anything too personal. He helped her with heavy tasks around the house without being asked, fixed things that needed repair, was kind and thoughtful without crossing any boundaries. It should have been enough. Sarah told herself it was enough. But sometimes she would catch him watching her with an expression of such profound longing that it took her breath away. And sometimes she knew her own expression mirrored his, betraying feelings she was trying desperately to suppress. One afternoon, Sarah was alone in the barn gathering eggs from the nests the hens insisted on making there when Nathan appeared. "Sorry, I did not know you were here. I came to check on the new foal." "It is all right. I am almost finished." Sarah placed the last egg carefully in her basket. Nathan moved to the stall where the week-old foal stood on gangly legs beside its mother. She is going to be a beauty, strong lines, good temperament. Sarah came to stand beside him, admiring the foal's silky coat. Clara wants to name her Buttercup. She has been insisting every meal time. Buttercup is a good name. Nathan smiled, and Sarah felt her heart squeeze at the warmth in his expression. This was the Nathan she had fallen for, the man whose kindness and gentle humor had captured her heart from the beginning. "Nathan," she began, not knowing what she wanted to say but needing to say something. He turned to her, and suddenly they were standing very close in the dim barn, the air thick between them. His hand lifted as if to touch her face, then dropped. "I should go. Thomas will be looking for me." But he did not move, and neither did Sarah. They stood frozen, inches apart, the tension crackling like lightning about to strike. Sarah could see the rise and fall of his chest, could feel the warmth radiating from his body, could smell the scent of leather and soap and something uniquely him. "We cannot do this," she whispered, even as she swayed slightly toward him. "I know." His voice was rough, strained. "I know we cannot, but God help me, Sarah, I want to. I want to so badly it physically hurts." "Nathan, please." She did not know if she was begging him to step away or move closer. His hand came up again, this time completing the motion, cupping her cheek with infinite gentleness. Sarah closed her eyes, leaning into the touch, allowing herself just this one moment of weakness. His thumb stroked her cheekbone, and she felt a tear escape, sliding over his hand. "I love you," Nathan breathed. "I will always love you, and I will spend the rest of my life knowing you belong to someone else." Sarah opened her eyes, looking into his storm-gray gaze, seeing her own pain reflected there. "I love you too. I think I have loved you since that first day when you picked me up from the stagecoach and looked at me like I was a person, not just a problem to solve." The confession was a relief and an agony. "But loving you does not change anything. I am still married to Thomas. I am still the mother of his children. I still made vows I intend to keep. I know, and I would never ask you to break them." Nathan's hand dropped away, taking its warmth with it. "But I needed you to know. I needed to say it out loud at least once. I love you, Sarah Lancaster Zimmerman. I will love you until I die, and it will have to be enough to know you love me too, even if we can never be together. It will destroy us both, loving like this." Sarah stepped back, putting distance between them before she did something unforgivable. "Then we will be destroyed together, from afar." Nathan's smile was sad and beautiful. "But at least we will know the truth. At least we will not spend our lives wondering what might have been." Sarah fled the barn, leaving the eggs behind, needing to get away before she did something that would shatter the life she had built. She made it to her bedroom before the sobs came, muffling them in her pillow so no one would hear. She loved Nathan. He loved her, and they could never be together. It was a tragedy worthy of Shakespeare, a love story without a happy ending. But unlike a Shakespearean tragedy, they would not die. They would simply live, day after day, year after year, loving from a distance, choosing duty over desire, protecting the innocent people who depended on them. That evening at supper, Sarah could barely look at Nathan. Thomas seemed oblivious to the tension, talking animatedly about plans for expanding the herd. Clara chattered about Buttercup the foal. James smeared food across his face with cheerful abandon. It was a normal family dinner, except Sarah felt like she was cracking apart inside. After the children were in bed, she found Thomas in his study going over the ranch books. "Can we talk?" He looked up, immediately concerned by her tone. "Of course. What is wrong?" Sarah closed the door behind her and sat in the chair across from his desk. "Nathan told me today that he loves me, and I told him I love him too." The words fell like grenades, and Thomas went very still. "I see." Nothing happened. We did not kiss or touch beyond a moment when he touched my face, but we confessed our feelings, and I thought you should know. Sarah twisted her hands in her lap. I do not want secrets between us, Thomas. You deserve honesty. Thomas set down his pen with careful precision. Thank you for telling me, though I cannot say I am surprised. I have known for years that you and Nathan had feelings for each other. You knew? Sarah stared at him. I am not blind, Sarah. I see how you look at each other when you think no one is watching. I see the tension, the longing. Thomas leaned back in his chair. I knew when you married me that your heart was not fully mine. I chose to accept that because I thought a practical marriage would be better anyway. But I will admit it has been harder than I anticipated, knowing my wife loves my brother. I am sorry. Sarah felt tears threaten again. I never meant to hurt you. I have tried so hard to be a good wife, to build a real marriage with you. You have been a good wife. An excellent wife, actually. You have given me 2 beautiful children, managed our home wonderfully, supported me in everything I do. Thomas's voice was gentle. But you have never given me your whole heart, and I have never given you mine. Sarah blinked through her tears. What are you saying? I am saying that I care about you deeply, Sarah. I respect you, appreciate you, am grateful for you. But I do not think I am capable of the kind of romantic love you and Nathan have for each other. Thomas stood and came around the desk, sitting in the chair beside hers. I married you because I needed a wife, someone to help build this ranch and raise children. You married me for security and a home. We have both held up our ends of the bargain admirably, but we have never been in love, not really. Does that bother you? Sarah needed to understand what he was feeling. Sometimes. When I see how Emily looks at Marcus, or remember how our parents were with each other, I wonder if I have missed out on something important. Thomas took her hand. But mostly I am content with what we have. You are a good companion, a good mother, a good partner in running this ranch. That is enough for me. But it is not enough for me. The admission felt like a betrayal, but it was true. I want more, Thomas. I want to be loved the way Nathan loves me. I want to feel that passion, that deep connection. And I feel so guilty for wanting it because you have been nothing but good to me. Thomas was quiet for a long moment. What do you want to do, Sarah? Do you want to leave? To be with Nathan? The question hung in the air, offering a possibility she had never allowed herself to consider. I cannot leave. What about Clara and James? They need their mother, and you need a wife to help run this place. Clara and James would not be without a mother. You could take them with you. Thomas's voice was calm, practical, as though discussing a business arrangement. And I could hire help for the house, or remarry eventually. There are options. Sarah stared at him in shock. You would let me go. You would give up your children just so I could be with Nathan. I would not be giving them up. You would bring them to visit, and I would see them regularly. It would be difficult, yes, but children are adaptable. They would adjust. Thomas squeezed her hand. I want you to be happy, Sarah. You have given me so much. If I can give you this chance at real love, maybe that is how I repay the debt. There is no debt, Thomas. Marriage is not a transaction. Sarah felt her world tilting, everything she thought she understood being called into question. And even if you would let me go, what about Nathan? He is not here asking for this. He explicitly said he would not ask me to break my vows. Then maybe someone should ask him what he actually wants instead of what he thinks is honorable. Thomas stood, pulling Sarah to her feet. I am going to send him in here. You two need to talk, really talk about what you want your lives to look like. And then we will all make decisions based on honesty instead of obligation. Before Sarah could protest, Thomas left the study. She heard his footsteps in the hall, heard him call for Nathan, heard low voices in conversation. Then Nathan appeared in the doorway, his expression confused and wary. Thomas said you wanted to see me. He stepped inside, leaving the door slightly ajar. Close the door, Nathan. Sarah's voice was steadier than she felt. He did, then turned to face her. What is this about? Thomas was acting strange. I told him about our conversation in the barn. About our confessions of love. Sarah watched his face pale. He was not surprised. He said he has known for years that we had feelings for each other. Sarah, I am sorry. I should never have put you in this position. Stop. Just stop apologizing and listen. Sarah moved closer to him. Thomas asked me what I want, if I want to leave to be with you. And he said he would let me go, let me take the children, give us a chance to be together. Nathan looked stunned. He would do that. He would give up his wife and children, not give up, share custody. Still be their father, but allow me the freedom to build a life with you. Sarah felt tears sliding down her cheeks again. So I am asking you, Nathan, is that what you want? Do you want me to leave Thomas and marry you? Or were those words in the barn just expressions of impossible feelings that you never intended to act on? Nathan stared at her for a long moment, his expression cycling through shock, hope, fear, and finally, careful consideration. What I want and what is right are not the same thing, Sarah. What if they could be? What if Thomas is giving us permission to choose each other? What if we could have what we have both wanted for so long? Sarah moved closer still, close enough to touch him if she dared. Tell me honestly, Nathan, do you want to marry me? More than I want anything else in this world. His voice was rough with emotion. But Sarah, think about what you would be giving up. Your security, your standing in the community, the life you have built here. People would talk. They would call you terrible things for leaving your husband. It would be hard on you and the children. I know the risks. But I also know that I have spent years trying to make myself content with a loveless marriage, and I am tired. I want to be with someone who sees me, who loves me for who I am, not just what I can provide. Sarah took his hand, feeling the warmth and strength of it. I want to be with you, Nathan, if you will have me. Nathan pulled her into his arms then, holding her so tightly she could barely breathe. Of course I will have you. I have wanted you since the moment I saw you step off that stagecoach looking scared and brave and beautiful. I have loved you through your marriage to my brother, through my marriage to Lily, through every impossible day of the past years. If Thomas is truly willing to let you go, then yes, Sarah, I want you to marry me. I want to build a life with you. I want to be a father to Clara and James, to give them the love and attention they deserve. Sarah pulled back just enough to see his face. Are you sure? Once we do this, there is no going back. Our relationship with Thomas will never be the same. The family will be fractured. I know, and it breaks my heart to hurt my brother this way, but he is offering us this chance, and I think refusing it would hurt him more. He knows you do not love him the way you love me. Living with that knowledge would poison your marriage eventually. Nathan cupped her face in both hands. If we are going to do this, we need to do it right. We need to be honest with everyone. Make sure Clara and James understand as much as they can at their ages. Ensure Thomas is truly at peace with this decision. You are right. Sarah leaned into his touch, allowing herself to believe this might actually happen. We need to talk to Thomas together, make sure he understands what this means. They found Thomas in the parlor, a glass of whiskey in his hand. He looked up when they entered, his expression carefully neutral. Have you talked? We have. Sarah sat beside him on the sofa, Nathan taking the chair across from them. Thomas, are you absolutely certain about this? You would truly let me go? I would. Thomas looked between them. I am not happy about it. I am not thrilled to lose my wife to my brother. But I have spent a lot of time thinking about what makes a good life, and I have come to realize that forcing people into roles they do not fit is not it. You need to be with Nathan. He needs to be with you. And I need to find someone who can love me the way I deserve to be loved, not just tolerate me for security. We will make sure you see the children regularly, Nathan said. They will know you as their father. We will never try to replace you or diminish your role in their lives. I appreciate that. Thomas drained his whiskey. How do you want to do this? Divorce is complicated and scandalous, especially in Texas. We could go to California, Nathan suggested. I have heard divorce laws are more lenient there. We could establish residence, file for divorce on grounds of irreconcilable differences, and then marry once it is finalized. That could take a year or more. Thomas frowned. What about the children? What about the ranch? I cannot run this place alone. I could stay and help until you find someone to replace me, Nathan offered. Or we could hire additional hands now so you have support in place before we leave. They talked late into the night, working out the practical details of dismantling one life and building another. It was painful and complicated, but they approached it with honesty and care for each other's feelings. By the time they finally went to bed, a plan was in place. Sarah would tell Clara and James age-appropriate versions of what was happening. Nathan would begin looking for property in California where they could establish residence. Thomas would start the process of finding a housekeeper and additional ranch hands. In 6 months, Sarah and the children would leave with Nathan for California, and the divorce proceedings would begin. That night, Sarah lay beside Thomas in their bed for one of the last times, and they talked quietly in the darkness. I am sorry I could not be what you needed, she said, and I am sorry I could not be what you needed. Thomas's voice was sad but not angry. We tried, Sarah. We really did try to make this work. It just was not enough. Do you think you will remarry, find someone who can love you properly? Sarah needed to know he would be all right. Maybe eventually. I am not getting any younger and I do not want to grow old alone. Thomas shifted onto his side to face her. There is a widow in town, Margaret Porter, who runs the boarding house. She has been friendly whenever I am in town. Maybe I will call on her once you are gone. I think that is a good idea. Sarah managed a smile. You deserve to be happy too, Thomas. We all do. That is why this is the right choice, even though it is hard. He reached out and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear in a gesture of affection. You have been a good wife, Sarah. I want you to know that. This failure is not on you. It is not on you either. We just were not right for each other in that way. Sarah blinked back tears. But we made 2 beautiful children together, and that is something wonderful that came from our marriage. The best thing. Thomas's voice was thick with emotion. Take good care of them. And let them know I love them always. I will. I promise. They held each other that night, 2 people who had tried their best and were now choosing different paths. It was sad and bittersweet, the end of one chapter and the beginning of another. The next 6 months were busy with preparations. Sarah told Clara and James in simple terms that Mama and Papa had decided they would be happier living separately, that Clara and James would live with Mama and Uncle Nathan in a new place, but they would visit Papa often. Clara cried and asked many questions, struggling to understand. James was too young to fully grasp what was happening but sensed the tension and became clingy. The community was shocked when news of the impending divorce spread. Mrs. Hayes came to visit, full of concern and judgment. Sarah, you cannot be serious about this, leaving your husband for his brother. Think of the scandal. Think of the children. I am thinking of the children, Sarah said firmly. I am thinking that they deserve to grow up in a home where the adults love each other, not just tolerate each other for the sake of propriety. And I am thinking of myself, of the fact that I have spent years in a loveless marriage and I deserve a chance at real happiness. But the shame of it, people will talk, they will call you terrible things. Mrs. Hayes was genuinely distressed. Let them talk. I cannot live my life according to other people's opinions. Sarah poured tea with steady hands. I appreciate your concern, Mrs. Hayes, truly I do, but my mind is made up. In 3 months, I will leave for California with Nathan and my children. Thomas will remain here and build his own new life. Word of Thomas being courted by Margaret Porter helped soften some of the scandal. If the wronged husband was moving on, perhaps the situation was not as terrible as it seemed. Emily struggled with the changes, torn between her loyalty to both brothers and her affection for Sarah. But eventually she accepted that this was what all the adults involved wanted, and she threw her support behind making the transition as smooth as possible for the children. Nathan purchased land in Northern California, near Sacramento, with money he had saved from his years of work. He would start a small horse ranch there, focusing on breeding quality stock. Sarah and the children would join him once the property was prepared. The day of their departure arrived with summer heat and dust. Sarah packed the last of their belongings, her heart heavy despite her excitement for the future. This had been her home for nearly 5 years. She had grown and changed here, had become a mother here, had built a life even if it was not the right one ultimately. Thomas helped load the wagon, his expression stoic but his eyes sad. When everything was ready, he lifted Clara and James for final hugs. "Be good for your mama," he told Clara, "and remember that Papa loves you very much." "I will miss you, Papa." Clara clung to him, crying. "I will miss you too, sweetheart, but I will come visit soon and you can come home to visit me too." Thomas kissed her forehead, then set her down and picked up James. "And you, little man, you take care of your mama and sister." James did not understand enough to cry, but he patted Thomas's face with his small hands. "Papa." "That is right, Papa." Thomas's voice cracked, and he handed James to Sarah before he broke down completely. Sarah and Thomas looked at each other for a long moment, years of complicated history passing between them. "Thank you," Sarah said quietly, "for everything, for giving me a home when I needed one, for giving me these beautiful children, for letting me go when you could have held on." "Be happy, Sarah, that is all I want now." Thomas managed a smile. "And tell Nathan to take good care of you or he will answer to me." Nathan stepped forward then, embracing his brother. "Thank you, Thomas. I know this is not easy for you. Just love her the way she deserves. Make sure my children are safe and happy. That is all I ask." Thomas pulled back, his eyes wet. "You are still my brother, Nathan. Nothing changes that." "Nothing changes that," Nathan agreed. They left in the afternoon, Sarah looking back at the ranch until it disappeared from view. Thomas stood in the yard watching them go, a solitary figure growing smaller in the distance. Sarah cried quietly, mourning what was ending even as she moved toward what was beginning. The journey to California took weeks, traveling by wagon and train, stopping at hotels and boarding houses along the way. Clara adapted better than expected, excited by the adventure of new places. James was fussy and clingy but managed. Nathan was patient and kind with both children, already stepping into the role of father with natural ease. Late at night in various hotel rooms, after the children were asleep, Sarah and Nathan would sit together and talk about their future. They made plans for the ranch they would build, the life they would create together. They talked about eventually marrying once the divorce was final, about maybe having more children together, about building something real and lasting based on love rather than convenience. "I still can hardly believe this is happening," Sarah said one night, tucked against Nathan's side on a narrow hotel bed while the children slept in a nearby room. "That we actually get to be together. I know what you mean. I keep expecting to wake up and find it was all a dream." Nathan pressed a kiss to her hair. "But it is real. You are here with me and we have the rest of our lives ahead of us. Are you happy?" Sarah needed to know. "Happier than I have ever been." Even with all the complications and difficulties, even knowing we have hurt people we care about to get here, I am happy." Nathan tilted her face up to his. "I love you, Sarah. I will spend the rest of my life making sure you never regret choosing me. I could never regret it." Sarah kissed him softly, marveling that she was finally allowed this, that she could touch him and kiss him without guilt or shame. "I love you so much." They finally consummated their relationship on the journey after the children were asleep, and they had privacy in a hotel room in Nevada. It was everything Sarah had imagined and more, tender and passionate, filled with years of pent-up longing finally released. Afterwards, lying in Nathan's arms, she felt complete in a way she never had with Thomas. This was what love was supposed to feel like. This connection, this perfect fit of bodies and hearts and souls. She had not known what she was missing until she experienced it, and now she could never go back to settling for less. They arrived in Northern California in late summer to find the property Nathan had purchased even more beautiful than described. Rolling hills dotted with oak trees, good grazing land, a creek running through the property, and a sturdy house that needed work but had good bones. It was smaller than the Texas ranch, more modest, but it was theirs. Sarah threw herself into making the house a home, cleaning and painting and arranging furniture. Nathan worked on the outbuildings and fences, preparing to bring in their first horses. Clara explored every inch of the property with fearless enthusiasm, while James followed his sister on chubby toddler legs. They established residence in California, and Nathan filed for Sarah's divorce from Thomas on grounds of irreconcilable differences. The legal proceedings were complex and expensive, but they moved forward. Letters from Texas came regularly, Thomas reporting on life at the ranch, Emily sharing news about her growing family. The children wrote letters back with Sarah's help, maintaining their connection to the life they had left behind. A year after leaving Texas, the divorce was finalized. Sarah was officially no longer Mrs. Thomas Zimmerman, free to build a new life. Nathan proposed properly that evening, getting down on one knee in their parlor while Clara and James watched with wide eyes. "Sarah Lancaster, I have loved you from the moment I met you. Will you do me the honor of becoming my wife? Not for convenience or security, but for love. Pure, simple, complicated, wonderful love." "Yes." Sarah pulled him up and kissed him while the children cheered. "Yes, absolutely yes." They married in a small ceremony at the local church with a few neighbors they had befriended in attendance. Emily and Marcus made the journey from Texas to witness it, Emily crying happy tears as she watched her brother marry the woman he had always loved. Thomas did not come, claiming ranch business kept him tied down, but he sent a letter of congratulations and a generous gift. The wedding was nothing like Sarah's first marriage. This ceremony was filled with joy and love, with promises made freely rather than out of necessity. When Nathan kissed his bride, Sarah felt her heart might burst with happiness. This was what she had been waiting for, what she had crossed a country to find even if she had not known it at the time. Their wedding night was passionate and tender, a celebration of finally belonging to each other legally and completely. Afterwards, wrapped in Nathan's arms, Sarah felt tears slide down her cheeks. "Why are you crying?" Nathan asked gently, wiping them away. "Because I am so happy. Because I never thought I could have this. Because you are mine and I am yours and nothing can separate us now." Sarah kissed him between words. "I love you so much it terrifies me. I love you too. More than words can express." Nathan held her close. "We are going to have such a beautiful life together, Sarah, I promise you," and they did. Over the following years, they built a successful horse ranch, earned the respect of their community, and raised Clara and James with love and attention. Sarah gave birth to 2 more children, a son they named Daniel and a daughter named Rose. The house expanded to accommodate their growing family, filled with laughter and warmth. Clara and James visited their father in Texas every summer, maintaining a strong relationship with him despite the distance. Thomas eventually married Margaret Porter, and by all accounts, they were very happy together. He had 2 more children with Margaret, giving Clara and James half-siblings they adored. The complicated family structure worked better than anyone had expected. Thomas and Nathan corresponded regularly, rebuilding their brotherhood through letters and occasional visits. Sarah and Thomas achieved a cordial friendship, able to co-parent effectively without the strain of an unhappy marriage between them. Emily and Marcus had 4 children and remained close to both families, serving as a bridge between Texas and California. Emily often remarked that she had never seen Nathan happier, that leaving Texas and marrying Sarah had been the best decision he ever made. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Nathan surprised Sarah with a trip back to Georgetown, Texas. They left the younger children with a trusted neighbor and brought Clara and James, now 13 and 11 respectively, to visit their roots. The ranch looked much the same, Thomas and Margaret having maintained it well. Thomas greeted them warmly, showing them around, introducing them to his other children. It was strange and wonderful to see how everyone's lives had evolved, how the pain and complexity of years ago had mellowed into something manageable. One evening, after the children were all in bed, Sarah, Nathan, and Thomas sat on the porch drinking coffee like old times. "I wanted to thank you," Nathan said to his brother, "for letting her go, for giving us a chance at happiness. I know it cost you." "It did," Thomas admitted, "but I have found my own happiness with Margaret. She loves me in ways I never expected, ways Sarah could not because her heart belonged to you." He smiled at them both. "We are all better off for making the hard choice. It worked out the way it should have." "I am glad you are happy, Thomas." Sarah meant it sincerely. "You deserve that." "We all do." Thomas raised his coffee cup. "To making hard choices that lead to good outcomes, to family in all its complicated forms, to love however it finds us." They clinked cups together, 3 people who had been tangled in an impossible situation and had found a way to untangle it with grace and care. It had not been easy, and there had been pain along the way, but they had all ended up where they belonged. Years later, when Sarah was in her 50s with grown children and grandchildren starting to appear, she would look back on the journey that had brought her to Nathan and marvel at how things had worked out. She had come to Texas as a desperate mail-order bride, planning to marry a man she had never met for security and survival. She had nearly married the wrong brother, had spent years in a loveless marriage, had struggled with impossible feelings and complicated ethics. But in the end, love had won. Not easily, not without cost, but genuinely and completely. She had found her way to Nathan, the man whose storm-gray eyes had seen her from the very beginning, who had offered her impossible alternatives and then made them possible. She had 4 children who were happy and healthy, a husband who still looked at her like she hung the moon, a life filled with purpose and joy and love. The ranch in California had prospered, and they were respected members of their community. Her relationship with Thomas had healed into genuine friendship, and Clara and James had 2 fathers who loved them. It was not the life she had imagined when she stepped off that stagecoach in Georgetown all those years ago. It was better. It was real. It was hers. And when Nathan would pull her close in the evenings, sitting on their porch watching the sunset over California hills, she knew with absolute certainty that every difficult choice, every painful moment, Every complicated circumstance had been worth it to end up here, in his arms, exactly where she belonged. Their youngest daughter, Rose, married a fine young man from Sacramento, and their wedding brought the whole extended family together. Thomas came with Margaret and their children. Emily and Marcus brought their brood, and for a weekend the ranch was filled with more people and noise and love than it had ever held. Sarah watched Nathan dancing with Rose at the reception, saw the pride and love on his face, and felt her heart swell. This man, this good and kind and loving man, was hers. They had built this beautiful, complicated, wonderful family together. They had overcome impossible odds to be together. That night, lying in bed after all the guests had finally settled, Nathan pulled Sarah close. "What are you thinking about?" he asked. "About how far we have come. About that day you picked me up from the stagecoach, and I thought I was there to marry your brother." Sarah smiled in the darkness. "About how you told me to marry you instead, eventually. It just took us a few years to get there. Best decision I ever made, fighting for you." Nathan kissed her temple. "Even when it seemed impossible, even when everyone said we should not, I knew we belonged together. Some things are worth fighting for, worth waiting for. I love you, Nathan Zimmerman. I will love you until my last breath and beyond." Sarah turned in his arms to face him. "Thank you for seeing me, for loving me, for making the impossible possible." "Right back at you, Mrs. Zimmerman." Nathan kissed her softly. "Now and always you are my heart." Outside, the California stars shone bright over the ranch they had built together, the family they had created, the love that had overcome every obstacle. It was not the story Sarah had expected to live, but it was the one she would not trade for anything in the world. And as she drifted to sleep in her husband's arms, surrounded by love and family and the life they had built together, Sarah knew with perfect certainty that some journeys, no matter how complicated or painful, lead exactly where they are supposed to. She had come to Texas looking for security and found love instead. She had married the wrong brother and ended up with the right one. She had made impossible choices that led to perfect outcomes. It was a wild, wonderful, complicated love story, and it was all hers.